Wait for it.
There it
Oh, there they are.
is.
Okay.
Oh, look at that handsome couple. Beautiful. How are you
How are
guys?
you?
It's been almost 2 years since I've talked to you guys.
I know
It
it's
doesn't
been a
seem like
long.
that long. Yeah.
Wow. Yeah.
Well, we were wondering, do you still do all your podcasts? It's been a long time, and so you're just our source of our history and our memory with all of our adventures. So we were like, we have to get Adam to do a podcast with us.
I love it. I'll break out the headphones and the microphone for you guys any day of the week. Are you kidding me?
Awesome.
So you guys have had a great summer.
Yeah, it's been pretty crazy. Just trying to prepare and train for the 14er record that we did, but leading up to it was just kind of a wild ride and in training and in preparation for it. And I had surgery in January, and so it's just been an adventure for sure.
Okay. Okay. So, what made you guys want to do this? I mean, you've done everything in Colorado. You guys are the power couple of Colorado. You guys have done everything. Nolan's. You've already done all the 14ers, I believe. This is your first time, though, right, Andrea?
No, I've done the 14er, what the
Oh,
14er record.
The
Is that what
record,
you're talking
all
about?
at once.
yeah,
Oh,
Yeah.
yeah, yeah.
yeah. So I've done the 14ers in 24 hours. So that's about basically and Nolan's, but yeah, so as far as all the 14ers goes in a record, this would be the first time that I've tried something like this
I'll
to
give
this
you a
magnitude.
little background. There was she supported me back in 2015 when I did the record. And back
Okay.
then she wasn't really an like any sort of like an endurance athlete,
Yeah. Yeah.
That was kind of an introduction to it for
Yeah.
her. But then in the years since, she became my little protege.
Of course. Yeah.
And
Yeah.
and then and that sort of led up to her having that great year where she did just amazing on like Nolan's and stuff.
Yep.
And and so it was kind of around then we were kind of thinking, hey, she could have this like a shot at like the female record on the 14ers. And we were kind of thinking along those lines. But then at some point, I was like looking at the old record, and I had so much bad luck with weather and stuff like that. I was like, man, we wouldn't even have to be faster than me, and we could probably go beat my old time. And
Uh,
so I was like, but she kind of like where I come in handy is I know all the routes.
sure.
Andrea, when she does these records, it requires a lot of prep because she wants to know them like the back of her hand. She doesn't want to have
Mm,
any doubt. And there's just too many of them. It would take a long time to study.
of
So it's like,
course.
so that's what I would contribute is like I've got the great route knowledge, and then she's obviously super fast and really fit. And so anyway, we just figured it would be a great thing to do as a team.
Hmm.
Mm, mm.
Yeah.
So it's the co-ed record, correct? And probably the
Yeah,
first
yeah,
co-ed team to
no
ever.
other couple's been stupid enough to try this ever before, you
Yeah.
know.
Yeah.
There was back in the 90s, there was a pair of guys, Ricky Trujillo and Rick Denisick, and they actually did it like several times, that like three different times they set off as a team to do it.
Okay.
So
Okay.
we're not the first pair that's done it, but we're the first
Sure.
couple for sure. Yeah.
Sure. Okay.
But they didn't, did they finish
I
together?
think
They
they
did.
finished together twice, two
Oh,
out of three
twice,
times.
two out
Yeah.
of three.
Wow. Okay. Andrea, this has to be the longest endeavor you've done. Correct me
Yeah.
if I'm wrong. I mean,
Yeah, I mean, with all the experience that I have in the 14ers, I mean, but I've never linked up an attempt for gosh, over a week and a half. And,
yeah.
originally we thought that we could beat Andrew's record, but about 4 or so days into the record, we started slowing and, bad luck started happening. And so we just realized that we needed to kind of slow up. But it was really hard, but it definitely an experience for sure.
I feel like she had a good background because, Nolan's is really perfect training for something like that
Yeah.
because, you do go a couple nights without sleep. And the last time we did Nolan's, I don't think we talked to you about that when we had this great like north to south run last year. It was fairly slow in the end, but it was a great experience for us,
Yeah.
and and we actually ended up staying awake for like three total nights
Yes.
on that one.
So
Yeah.
my mom passed away
Wow.
last September, and after she passed away, we wanted to kind of salvage the year. We didn't I was dealing with this hamstring injury. My mom was sick. And so we were like, we had two kind of FKTs that we wanted to go for. And one was just Nolan's in the north to south direction.
Okay.
Which, by the way, we think is way harder.
Super hard.
We hate that way.
Yeah.
I agree. I agree. Yeah.
And then the other FKT we did was, I just thought was super cool, was just the Crestones loop. 514ers, Humboldt, Kit Carson, Challenger, Crestone Peak, Crestone Needle. And so we were able to kind of just get those two adventures in. And I really wanted to do Nolan's that year just because I needed to know that I could do one more really long adventure before we went out for the 14ers record together. And it ended up being that it took us just about 57 hours actually to do our Nolan's adventure, which there was so much that happened. It was crazy.
I was thinking that was going to be my shot to get under 50. and we were just considered ourselves lucky to get under 60 that time. Yeah.
We have a pretty big write-up about it, but it was interesting because it ended up being about 3 nights that we were awake for. And so that kind of gave me the confidence that I needed, like, okay, I have a shot at being able to at least see through some sort of time for the 14er record of whatever sort however we go after it. And so I think that was really important last year to be able to experience, before we went for it this year.
So just
Yeah,
in
I think a
terms
lot
of
of
mental
people-
confidence?
Yes, I would say I just, after everything that happened, in 2023, I just needed, just a little bit more confidence that, before we trained for the 14er record, I just wanted to know that my nighttime, exhaustion I can handle, because I do have a hard time going at night and doing nighttime peaks and being tired. And so I just needed a little more experience, in my opinion, to, be tired at night and still hold that positive attitude and still be able to go and push through the hard nights.
Well, that's something that's hard to train for, staying up all night for consecutive nights. But do you feel like staying up for those 3 nights really did pay off in dividends this year? Or
I think it just honestly, it just gave me a boost of confidence mentally.
Sure. Okay.
I feel like that with my experience with Nolan's and longer adventures with Andrew and our history of, our big backpacking trips that we would do, we do have that endurance and that ability to keep going. But I think for my mental sake, I just needed that one last Nolan's under my belt before we went for it.
Okay.
Yeah.
Okay.
Most people don't train that sleep deprivation very hard. You're lucky nowadays if you do a Nolan's or something like that to get that experience. Otherwise, where do you get that?
Yeah.
No one goes out all night long. It's just too tough on your body. And so doing a Nolan's is great because you can see how do you handle night 1 or night 2. I mean, now people are doing it so fast they don't even need a second night. But for that second night is really hard. And
Sure.
The 14er record, it's interesting because you do get lots of little breaks, as you're getting driven from peak to peak,
Yeah.
but it's not enough to really get recovered.
It's
Right.
not enough for your body to recover. And then it actually really sucks being woken up after a 2-hour nap and getting kicked out of the car at 2 o'clock.
You don't want to go.
When it's freezing.
We've actually still been having nightmares.
Yeah.
Every night we'll wake up and it's like, oh my God, we gotta go.
We gotta go. Our tracking is on, or we're stuck on the mountain still.
Right.
Like, we haven't gotten across. It's just
we woke up. We were both dreaming separately about being stuck on longs.
Oh my God. Oh, that's a nightmare. So you guys have been planning this for quite a while, at least since the beginning of the year.
Well, we've been thinking about it for much longer than that, even. Like Andrea's been thinking about it. And then, last year there was just no way with her injury. Even this year, so there's so much planning that goes into this, like with getting a crew. And we had a lot of crew members, we had like 10 people that were more or less full-time, not 100%, but more or less full-time. Not to mention, you got to, we wanted to do this right with the private peaks. So we made sure we had permission for all these peaks that are off limits. We had to make sure we had our pass for Culebra, our pass for the train. There's just so many pieces. And then Andrea had this surgery and recovery. Honestly, I think they kind of build it like it would be a little faster. I was kind of surprised. Like I was like, hey, I thought they said after 3 months you could train. And like, oh no, no, no. I mean, now you can start thinking about
Yeah,
training.
so I started
and
training
it's
like
yeah.
mid-May for
So
this.
she really didn't have a lot of time. I mean, she was doing some PT and stuff, getting the muscle strengthened, but there was no actual like training.
Cardio.
Yeah, and then right when we could have started, we went to Belize for 10 days, Yeah.
Nice.
So that was
Decided to go
yeah,
scuba diving
yeah.
instead.
And that was great, but it wasn't what we needed to be doing. And
Right.
so honestly, the smart thing to do probably would have been to delay this another year, but so much work had gone into getting us started.
Yeah,
I almost felt like we were trapped.
and also like not to mention we ended up getting Arcteryx to help support our project as well.
Okay.
So
Oh,
they gave us a bunch of gear and they helped us financially, and we have a videographer who was really invested in doing a documentary.
that's
And
what I hear.
so
Yeah, that's
yeah, and
exciting.
so Riley, he has just been really invested in us. And then the surgery and my surgeons, and so we felt like that there was way too much and invested in us, and too many people invested in us, that we did feel stuck, and we had to go for it, and we had to fit in as much training in 5 weeks as we could.
Yeah.
Damn, 5 weeks. Okay.
Yeah, it doesn't sound like enough. We were hopeful that we had read something about how, you know, it's not like, we were starting from zero. We have years of just doing this, and there's
Sure.
some sort of muscle memory in there, So, we're hopeful that our bodies would just sort of take over, even though we might not be at our peak fitness level.
Yeah, we were just, your bodies remember, and, you do have this base fitness. So even though we had to take off a few months, it's still, I mean, a few months in this grand scheme of years, really, and the years of experience that we have, it turned out to be okay.
Good. Andrea, if I remember right, you are like a one ingredient type of person in order to try and heal your body, or were you doing that throughout your surgery? Did that
Yeah.
continue?
Yeah, I was, I definitely, this surgery was huge for me, and I was trying to be as good as I could through healing and through the recovery process. I really just was careful not to gain, weight. I wanted to stay, I have a specific weight range that I like to stay in, that I know my fitness level, where I have a good fitness level.
Yeah.
And so I really wanted to stay within that range. And so I was really careful about, what I was eating, and just the recovery process this time around. I really wanted to do it right and take it seriously, because I knew that when I started training, it wasn't going to be, oh, I have to lose some weight first and then I can start training. Like I had to we had to hit the ground running. So there was no time to lose my winter weight. That had to be gone already. And
Sure.
so, yeah. And so I was definitely being strict for the winter season.
And hey, for the first time ever, I was totally on board. I had listened to these podcasts in December. And so starting January 1st, New Year's resolution sort of thing, I was like, sugar was my number one enemy. I mean, my kids have been so annoyed with me, and so I was on board.
Really cool. We
Yeah.
would listen to podcasts together, and I mean, it was just really cool. I mean, we've made so many dinners together. I mean, every dinner was cooking and chopping and all this stuff. So it was just really awesome to actually have Andrew on board with me and be, and just really be excited about being healthy and wanting to do this right. And I think it really benefited us. I think that just in the end, if we hadn't done that, would this have been possible? Who knows?
Yeah, we
Yeah.
were listening to all kinds of podcasts. Also, cold plunging, we've sort of like embraced
Right.
big time.
Yeah.
You know, like all winter we were going to the creek, even when it was frozen over, we were finding ways to go. You know, we're talking like 31-degree water, like less than
Sure.
freezing, which
Yeah.
is awful. And then we were eating super healthy. So we were really both on board with a lot of this
Yeah,
stuff, you know.
we were super motivated. I mean, we knew we had this huge goal and it's so intimidating. And I can't believe we were successful. I can't believe it's done. It just seems like such a dream to me. It's crazy. But I really definitely credit our hard work in the winter, not only training wise, but diet and, kind of all around.
Okay, so 5 weeks of training. Did you know you
Well,
only had 5 weeks?
sorry, I was interrupting. I didn't quite hear the end of your sentence. I was gonna say though, that wasn't mean we were nothing. Like, for example, after the surgery, she was still doing some like weightlifting type of stuff.
Okay.
So it was never like it was nothing. There was definitely a steady level, but not just in intense cardio. Like that was what she had to
Yeah,
skip
yeah.
out on. Yeah.
There was no getting
Yeah.
my heart rate up.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And so the only thing I could do was lift my upper body. I could do some calf raises. I was making sure that and doing my PT exercises. So, I mean, you can only really do so much weightlifting, but I did want to make sure that when it came time to cardio, that was the only thing that I really needed to work on and to get back when we started training again. And so we did call this in our blog Couch to 14er record because I really felt like that's what it was. I mean, just being on the couch for literally 3 months almost was really hard for me.
Yeah.
And what kept me going was thinking about this 14er record. And I mean, I don't know if I quite grasped the magnitude of it or how difficult recovery would be afterwards or how, the troubles that would come during the record, but
Sure.
just thinking about it and it really just kept me motivated to want to stay healthy and stay fit during the recovery phases of surgery.
Well, I find that super inspiring. Hopefully other people do too, but um, so yeah, with limited time to train, and speaking of mental confidence, in the beginning of this, aren't you saying, Andrea, like, what if this doesn't happen? What if I can't keep up? Are those thoughts going through your head?
Oh, yeah. I mean, so it's interesting because our original, like we were saying, our original goal was to beat Andrew's original time of 9 days, 21 hours. And we just figure that, well, we don't even have to hike faster than Andrew. If we cut out some transition time and we, have better weather, then we'll be able to do it. And we had an aggressive spreadsheet. After we after we made some edits, we padded our splits and kind of had a goal of a 9-day, 6-hour period,
Okay.
time period. And that was, but by day 4 we realized that was not realistic, that we needed the transition times. And with the go pace that we had the first 4 days, we really kind of slammed ourselves into the ground. And because I don't have the experience, I don't have this like, week and a half experience in the mountains. This was really like my first big endurance feat. And so I was really experiencing during the record those feelings of like, oh, I'm holding Andrew up. He could probably do this faster than me. He could probably do this and beat his 2015 time. And I think that's where I had a lot of those doubts of of am I bringing anything to the table? I'm holding Andrew
I
up.
feel like she's getting kind of ahead of herself though, because
Mhm.
she's now way off into the record when I kind of want to back up and just talk about those splits we had. Like
Please,
Yeah.
yeah.
we had this detailed spreadsheet and we had this super aggressive plan, which was kind of ridiculous thinking about it. It was pretty ideal when we look back at a lot of those. It was like, almost our FKT times from some of those, like that
Yeah.
Crestones loop,
Yeah.
on day
Like,
4,
on
yeah,
every
that,
single day.
and we knew that was unlikely. And in fact, when we were out there training in June, we weren't hitting any of our splits. So I was like, crap, I better pad these splits. And so I just padded everything to make it more reasonable. And I had a column, and it was comparing that time to what I had done in 2015. And I had it marked in red if we were ever supposed to be faster than me back then. And I had to justify anything like that. And it'd be like, well, on this particular drive, we got a flat tire and that cost us a half hour. So that's why I'm saying we're going to be faster. I had to justify it all the way down. So I basically had it where we were going to be like a half a day faster than me. And we were never going to have to hike faster than I did. It was literally just in improvements on bad luck, and stuff like that. And even then we just, it was still aggressive and we knew it, but we still thought we could beat that time. We still thought it was possible,
And I think to answer your question a little bit better on my end, I think I had a mental block up where I couldn't think about how hard it was going to be. Actually, we would like sit in our hot tub and Andrew would talk about how hard the record is. And I'd get frustrated because I'm like, it's going to be fine. We're going to be fine. We can't think about how hard it's going to be. And so I had this, I hadn't thought about yet, like, well, what if I'm too slow? Like, I knew that the possibility of not being able to finish, I knew the possibility of horrible things happening to our bodies, and lots of things going wrong. I knew those were all real, but I couldn't let those enter my mind because I needed to be strong.
Sure. Yeah. Scary though, right?
Yeah.
It's like blind strength, but
and for me too, I had kind of forgotten, after the last time I did the record, I sort of switched. Last time I did the record, I had tried 2 years in a row. I failed 1 year. I made it the next year, but that was like right when I did Nolan's the first time. It was like, and then after that record, I've now done Nolan's like 7 times and done lots of other things. And I kind of forgot why in the old days, people would ask me about Nolan's and I'd be like, Nolan's, it's just a subset. Like, I don't, piece of cake, and then I would do Nolan's and it's like, man, Nolan's is really hard, and I kind of forgot why I used to think that about Nolan's. And it's the 14er record is just so big, it's so big. And I forget, you forget the pain, you forget all that stuff,
and his sister's the first one to say, "Don't forget."
Oh yeah.
You forget you need time during
right. Oh yeah, my sister. We actually so we got together this big crew, and probably for the first time in history on these records, like we actually assembled them beforehand. We had this big crew meeting here. We had a presentation for them, where we introduced them all to each other. We had this presentation where we sort of showed them what we were aiming for. And I just remember my sister just making these sarcastic little comments.
She's rolling her eyes.
But you needed that stop time, but and I'm like, because we got to cut out all this wasted time, we got to get in the car and we're gonna go. And and she was just kind of shaking her head, smiling, and it was kind of annoying me. I do think somebody in the future will figure that out, but it's definitely not going to be me, because it just, as it turns out, she was exactly right about me. She still remembers, because it was traumatic for my family to see me going through all that. They remember, whereas I forget. And so anyway, we have this crew meeting, and yeah, that was pretty amazing. We've got all these people. We have a lot of 14er experience on this crew. To give you a snapshot, we've got literally everybody on the crew has done all the 14ers, like, so, that's just like a bare minimum,
for starters.
And then, so we've got Dan Hobbs, who I think you've talked to, he did this supported record. So doing it all self-supported, he has really good creative ideas on how to save times. A lot more creative than I ever was, honestly, because he had to do it himself. So he had some really good ideas that we would put to use. Another guy that he met, John, who was bringing this great off-road vehicle into the mix that we've never really had access to before. And John also did them all in 30 days. He did this documentary. And my gosh, the guy has a personality of gold. Everybody that meets him just loves the guy, And then we had, my sister and her husband. They've got the experience of being on all these things. We had or our
Megan.
friend Megan.
She's almost
yeah.
finished all the 14.
Oh, she's probably the one that hadn't done them all, but she's only got a couple left, you know. And then this guy Randy, he's like over 80. He's one of our fans,
He's
you know.
finished them all.
And he's
Nice.
just, you know, we went up with his finisher with him. We love him, and he was just super excited to help out. But anyway, we've got this amazing crew, and they're all
Probably-
super pumped up.
Right.
you
And
know?
probably, you know, the least experience would on the crew are my sisters, who actually ended up coming out and being a very key role, but they brought like an energy that the whole crew needed.
Mm.
So they were the least
I was
experienced.
going
but
to
we
mention
filled
them
the
later.
roles.
You know, they didn't come to the crew meeting, and in my mind, they were just going to show up and be kind of cheerleaders at the end. In the end, and I'd love, you know, we'll get to that,
We'll
but
get to it.
yeah, they
They were
ended up
critical.
being absolutely pivotal, like
Mhm.
to the
Yeah.
success of the whole thing.
Yeah.
Oh, and I forgot to mention this other guy. I mean, this is another big advantage we've had over anybody else, was we had a physical therapist,
Yeah.
and he was working on me mainly beforehand. I had a couple of foot injuries he was working on, but
Mhm.
he showed up during, you know, he sets up this massage table in a couple places, and you know, he was doing some PT work on us. But the poor guy, normally he likes to have a little bit of time to work on you, but the guy was under pressure. You know, he'd get us on there,
Like he's
and
got
then
10 minutes.
the crew would be like,
it.
"Come on, gotta go!" And you know, the poor guy's trying to tape us up and get us massaged and everything. And but anyway, so we had this like spectacular crew set up, and you know, we had this detailed plan. And but I did have a laugh one time when Dan wanted to have a meeting about the plan and talk about some little things, and it was kind of like, well, I see here on, you know, page 3, column 4, line 1, where you said the, and you probably meant then. And I was just kind of like, oh boy, you know, and I was kind of like trying to tell the guys, listen, you know, there's a saying about, you know, battle plans in war and how they never survive first contact with the enemy. And it was like, you know, this is just a guideline.
A
It's
plan.
just a guideline,
It's
but
just a
listen, it's
guideline.
probably going to get ripped to shreds, you know, and
And
little
it
did we
did.
know that was going to happen again, you know.
Wow.
So
Wow. Well, it sounds like you had a fantastic crew. I mean, that's a big help, right? And I saw pictures of four-wheelers and you guys sleeping in vans. And so to have all that help is essential to do something like this. So
Yeah.
it's
Pretty
it's a
critical.
lot different, you know. I still remember when you know, homie, this guy John Prater from Boulder,
yeah.
the record had stood for like 12 years by this guy Cave Dog in 2000 had said it, and he said it so strong nobody even looked at this record. It was that intimidating. And so one day this guy Prater goes out and decides to go for it, and he basically had one support crew guy. And I remember reading that story, and that's kind of what got me interested in it again after all those years. And it was this guy Bill Wright, and Bill Wright was writing this write-up. And it's just so crazy to think that, you know, there's just so much work for one person. It's too much work to do, you know.
Right.
And so and
For one
now,
person on
yeah,
the
for
crew,
one
yeah.
person, you know, there would be so much work to do. I think the days of being able to skate by with a little crew, I just don't think that would work anymore. It's just so much work. It's so tiring,
complicated.
exhausting, complicated, you know. Yeah, anyway,
requires
yeah,
a
I mean,
lot,
and
yeah.
Cave Dog actually was the first person that really dialed that in. He had this huge crew, ATV driver, a cook, you know, he spent thousands of dollars on it. And honestly, that was probably the reason he was so successful, you know.
Yeah.
And so we've taken that to the next level. I think they didn't have OHVs, you know, he had an ATV.
Yes.
I didn't know what a big difference in OHV was, but you know, I'll you know, when we get
Yeah.
to that description of day one,
Pretty amazing.
I'll tell you what that felt like to have that. You know, yeah. So anyway, having a big crew, it is pretty
It's great.
amazing.
It
You
is-
know, like we were
it's
really
great for a
lucky.
project like
We're really
this.
lucky to
Yeah.
have that many people that can take off that time and that want to help us, you
Yeah.
know.
Yeah, absolutely. So you guys have this big project planned. It feels like you're trapped into it. You've
Yeah.
got crew assembled. You're trained up. This sounds scary to me. And you guys just dive right in and go for it.
Well, yeah,
like how was
yeah.
it all mapped
Oh.
out too? Was that based on like the train ticket and when you can get to Culebra or like?
Oh, yeah. Yeah, that's so critical what you're talking about there. You wouldn't believe in this record.
Yeah.
It's so critical, the timing.
The order of peaks and the
Yeah.
timing is just
Yeah.
yeah.
Yeah. Now the
Sure.
actual flow throughout the state, that's pretty much solved. You know, there are some changes here and there, but for the most part, you're going to start in the San Juans, spend a couple days, get to the Sangres, go to the Saw Watch, to the Elks, back to the Saw Watch, and then finish off with all the easy ones, 10-mile Mosquito Range, Front Range. I know I blasted through that pretty fast for people that don't know the 14ers, but you know, so it's tough. But let's go back to the San Juans. So that's where you're going to start. You pretty much have to start in this group of mountains called Chicago Basin. And the reason you have to start there is because it's a long way in, and you need to do that when you're off the clock.
Yeah.
You know, and so usually what people do is you take the train up there, you backpack in all off the clock, and then you know you get in position, you know, and then the clock starts at like 4 o'clock in the morning. Faster people might go for 4:30, you know, might try to steal a half hour right there. Not me. We know we have to take, you know, we need the extra time. So start at 4 o'clock in the morning. You do those 4 peaks, and then you have to catch the train, and you're on the clock now. And really that's just critical, you know, getting out on the train. And then you have to be able to get through all the San Juans so that at the beginning of day 3 at 6 o'clock, you're there to get into Culebra.
Right.
You know,
So the whole front part of this is really on 2 timelines. The first one's the train, and the second one is getting to this peak called Culebra at 6 a.m. And basically how that goes is it's a privately owned peak, and it can be climbed on the weekends, Friday, Saturday, and Sunday. You have to get a ticket.
And you have to get this ticket months in advance.
Yep.
Yeah.
And so you get your ticket, and the gate opens at 6 o'clock, and everyone goes in at 6 o'clock. And after that, the gate shuts. And so the critical piece to, you know, how we had to work this is that we knew that we weren't fast enough to get to Culebra by 6 o'clock. I knew I was worried. And so I called the owner, and I was like, hey, Carlos, we aren't going to be able to get to Culebra by 6 o'clock. We're going to be running a little bit late, maybe an hour or so. Would you be willing to let us in a little bit later? And so from the beginning of all of this planning, we'd been in touch with him, and he was okay with letting us in a little bit later. So that was a really nice relief that we had, you know, a little bit of leeway getting into Culebra, because we were slower and we knew that that was how it was going to be. So it did give us a little bit.
But can I be honest with you? Getting there late, it's a terrible day to be running late, because you have some nasty mountains coming after there. So you really want to be there on time. And our original plan had us there on time, but when we had to repad it, we were like, crap, you know, we're just not going to make it on time. It's not very likely. You know, maybe I still had hope, you know, but so not only, but at least we didn't have the stress of it just being closed on us.
Right.
You know what I
And
mean?
we
Like
did have the weather on our side, which was good.
Yeah.
If the weather wasn't on our side, then the mountains following Culebra are very technical. We have technical climbs, we have technical ridges, and it's scary. It would be really scary to be up there in bad weather. So we'll actually talk about kind of day 1 and how we were wanting a restart, but the good weather window that we had really kept us in a good spot for all of these mountains.
Yeah. So we were lucky with that. But back to the whole schedule thing. So after that 6 o'clock window on Culebra, at that point, there's nothing like an absolute deadline moving forward. It's really just, you know, trying to hit peaks at the right times. But so that first 2 days is super critical,
Very stressful,
just in terms of your timing. And of course, because Culebra is scheduled, there's no forgiveness. Like, you know what I mean? If you see bad weather, you're kind of just stuck with it. You know, there's a lot of luck riding on the date you happen to choose for your start date. And we were actually really stressed out this year because it looked like an average snow year. And so we look at these SNOTEL charts that capture the snow data. It looked like average snow pretty much everywhere, but they don't have any sites above 12,000 feet. And this happened to be one of these years where there was still a ton of snow above 12,000 feet, even in these ranges that looked dried out when we were training in June. So we were kind of freaking out. We don't want to be worrying about snowshoes, you know, up there, like post-holing through a bunch of like hot snow that hasn't melted yet. It was really nerve-wracking for us, you know? Yeah. But
so those are some of the reasons why the first, like 3 or 4 days were, I mean, it sounds like you guys kind of front loaded this thing, but you had a lot packed into the first 3 or 4 days, and then you had to sort of mentally readjust.
Well, that was, you know, the original plan. Every day was going to look like that. That was just us falling apart.
Okay.
That was us falling apart.
So after we're so aggressive with our splits, and then day 4 comes and we've really beat ourselves into hell. And so basically we had to figure out how to kind of bring ourselves back up and continue on when we wanted to quit. Yeah.
But before we go there, it would be really fun. I really wanted to talk about just how this whole thing started. It was really ridiculous.
Please,
You
yeah,
know,
I'd
it
love to
was
hear
the
it.
super ridiculous, you know. And so, you know, I'll set the stage,
Talk
you know,
about day -1.
basically day -1, or actually day -2, you know, we're actually driving down there, you know, and it was beautiful, these rainbows and like cloud formations. You know, a lot of the crew was sort of starting to make their way down into their positions because day 1 is incredibly complex, all the moving parts, in terms of like catch the train, this guy drives us to there, this thing takes us to there, that person takes us to there. It's a lot of moving pieces. And so everyone's starting to coalesce, and we're getting these pictures of rainbows all over the state. It was like, wow, what a great omen, you know, what a great omen. And so anyway, the day beforehand, we have to take the train in, you know, so we get in Durango, and we're gonna hike up with our friend Dan. He's gonna hike up with us. He's gonna like carry all the gear, and then when we start,
He'll
and
set
we
up camp and then down
or
camp
yeah,
in
yeah.
Chicago Basin.
Yep, he'll take down camp and he'll meet us down at the train. We do all the mountains. We all get on the train and we're off, right? That's sort of the plan. But so the day before, we're on the train. We're gonna have this nice, relaxed hike up to Chicago Basin, you know. And so anyway, I should mention that earlier in the year there was this big mudslide and the train was closed for 2 weeks. And so we were definitely keeping our eye on that.
Yeah.
And they had it cleared for about a week, you know. So anyway, we're walking to the train, and Andrea sees some text about the mudslide, and I was like, you know,
and it
yeah.
says that the train is canceled to Silverton, and you know, due to a rock slide. And just a few weeks ago, we had, you know, we had seen issues with the rock slide, and so I mentioned to Andrew, and he
I was like, don't worry about it. I'm sure it's about the old mudslide.
It's about the old mudslide. Don't even worry about it. And I was like, God, that's weird that I just got this now, but okay.
I'm wrong so many times, you know, it's crazy, you know. Yeah.
Yeah. And so then we get on the train, and about 10 minutes before it leaves, one of the conductors comes out into our cart, and
Oops, are you guys there? Oh, you guys were.
We still have you there? We've lost
Hey, I'm back. You guys were froze up there for a second. Sorry about that.
Oh, good.
Okay, I think we're back. Check.
Oh, did we lose
okay.
Oh, there we go. We got you back.
Okay, I think I got you back.
Okay.
Sorry about that.
No problem. Well, where were we?
Okay, so the train ride in.
Oh, yeah. Well, okay, so we're sitting on the train. The conductor comes out, and she's like, there's been another mudslide, you know, the train, we can still get you to Needleton so they can drop backpackers off, but the train can't make it to Silverton now. And so we kind of look at each other and we're like, oh crap, because we have to get to Silverton the next day, you know? And I think Andrea asked the conductor if there was any chance.
I asked if there was any chance of us getting to Silverton the following day.
Yeah, and she was like, no way, you know, because they've got to get this track cleared.
Okay.
And so we have I think it was about 20 minutes before the train left to figure out plan B, you know, right there. And so just really quickly, we're like, Dan, stay on the train and you just get up into Chicago Basin and set up camp. And then Andrea and I get off the train and we're, you know, what do we do?
And we got to figure out plan B.
What do we do? Well, there is a trail that goes into Purgatory as well. It's like 10 miles. And it's kind of a rough, you know,
into Needleton.
Oh, into Needleton. Yeah. Oh yeah, sorry. It starts at the ski resort called Purgatory near Durango, and it goes for 10 miles in there. And, you know, obviously we can't hike in there. That would just take too much time, you know, coming out the next day. But we thought, okay, what if we took some bikes down there? You know what I mean? It's 10 miles. We could crank this baby out. There's a wilderness boundary sign leading into you know, Chicago Basin when you get about 10 miles in there. So that would be the limit of where you could take the bikes. You know, you can't take the bikes into the wilderness, but we're like, okay, that's going to be plan B, you know? So we have a couple of bikes, you know, it turns out that our guy, Randy, who's got the bikes, he's in Cortez. He's only an hour away, So we contact him in a panic. Hey, Randy, what are you doing? Can you get over here really quickly? And he's like, okay, I'll drop everything. I'll get there, And so anyway, that's the plan. That's the new plan. We're gonna go to Purgatory. We're gonna bike in, and we're thinking, okay, the next day then we'll bike out.
Get out.
And honestly, I was running all these numbers, figuring we could do 10 miles on a bike really quickly. And I'm like, okay, maybe we lose an hour. It's not the end of the world. Maybe we'll be okay. So anyway, we meet up with a couple of the crew members up there at the trailhead and get the bikes all set up, and off we go. And it turns out, the first 4 miles, it's on a map, it's downhill as you head down to the river. And then the last 6 miles, you're kind of headed up, kind of paralleling the railroad tracks as you head up and you get to the entrance to the hike to Chicago Basin. And that first 4 miles was a total freaking disaster. Yeah,
it was a single track. It was overgrown, and there were just huge boulders right in the middle, on the sides, all around. And it's not downhill, it's up and down. And so you're pushing these bikes up and down, and then we hop on the bike for about 25 seconds and then have to get off and push the bike. And
it was really
so we're just already 4 miles in, expending all this energy, not even riding. I mean, I've fallen off the bike already, hit my shin. I'm just
she's in a bad mood. And actually,
this is a wreck.
Yeah, it was kind of funny because on the way down, we meet another biker who's on his way up. And this guy had actually started a self-supported 14er record attempt the day before. And he had gone in with very little gear into Chicago Basin and got rained on all night. And he was like, screw this. And so he was headed out. He was like threw in the towel on day one. And he warned us. So he's like, hey, there's some mudslides. I would just stick on the railroad tracks if I were you. That's what his advice was to us. But we kept headed down. I, of course, didn't want to touch the railroad tracks because they're private property. I know the railroad doesn't want you on there. So I mean, I like to follow all the rules, And so anyway, a couple mudslides, no big deal, So anyway, so we go. We get down that first 4 miles, and okay, already I'm thinking, okay, well, we obviously aren't going to be biking out of here, so we'll have to have the crew meet us here, and then they're going to have to push the bikes out for us, and we'll have to hike out tomorrow. So it's a total disaster. I mean, it's like a 3,000-foot climb. It's just so much extra effort we'd be expending. So anyway, the next 6 miles, it turns out there were some rock slides on that trail too. One of them was this huge rock slide. I mean, you look up, you could see this huge like carve out of the mountain slope above, and there's this huge like just rock slide in front of us of these muddy boulders. And so we're climbing up the boulders, lugging the bikes up these things. They're all unstable, you know what I mean? So I kind of get ahead. I come back, I help Andrea with her bike. We get past that one, then there's another smaller one where it's just this soupy quicksand mud. And the only way to get through it is you're like hopping from boulder to log to boulder, trying to drag the bikes through.
These two, we were like, okay, if that was it, then we're okay.
It's okay.
We got this. We can do this. But little did we know that the third biggest mudslide was still ahead of us.
This was huge. It was just, I don't know, quarter of a mile.
It was a couple football fields long.
But we're talking like just pools of mud, and if the shallowest it would be, you'd step it'd be to your knees, and so you'd try to walk on these like unstable logs of all this debris.
You'd have to be on logs or rock, and if you're not, then you're at your knees. And so you're lugging your bike through, and it's through fallen logs, it's through branches, it's through trees, and in the meantime your bike is sinking, and then we're sinking, and we're trying to get on these branches and logs, and it's just a disaster.
Andrea got this one video of me where I had gone up and ahead, and I had hit a dead end, and I was trying to come back, and I'm just swearing and cussing.
I mean, he's sweating bullets. We're spending energy. We're spending calories. We're not drinking. We're not eating. I mean, it's just, we're a mess. We're wet. We're muddy. It's a disaster.
Yeah. So meanwhile, I break like 3 spokes on my bike. I was trying to, just in there, and it takes us an hour to get through that mudslide. And then, so by the time we get through there, and then we finish the ride to the base, like basically to where the train would have gotten us, it took us it was something like 7.5 hours to go the 10 miles. It was ridiculous, and we were exhausted. Our shoes were full of mud. They're soaking wet. And so now, anyway, so we leave the bikes there near the wilderness boundary and we head up Chicago Basin. We find Dan. Dan has no idea what the heck took us so long,
And it's time to go to bed.
Yeah, it's time to go to bed.
Eat,
Yeah.
get
Yeah.
calories in. We
Yeah.
need to drink. And well, we were able to get some calories in us and kind of get water in ourselves. And, after we dropped our bikes off, which was nice. But I mean, once we got up to Chicago Basin, we were exhausted and we needed to go to bed because we had a 4 a.m. start.
And we actually floated the idea of a restart with all the crew, like through our satellite messages and stuff.
Sure.
And it sounded like it would work out for most of the crew. I mean, we felt terrible. Like, it would just mess up everybody's summer plans. You know what I mean?
Mhm.
To ask
stop
for a week
Yeah.
restart. But the one thing that really kept us from the restart was I had texted Chris Tomer and we were just using him for weather. He's just a great friend of ours. And he said that he gave us the weather window and he said, past this, the monsoons are picking up. And so we had a great weather window that we really just couldn't sacrifice. And so we decided that we didn't know how the next day was going to play out, getting out of Chicago Basin. So we thought that, hey, let's just get started as if we're going to go for this record and just do the peaks in here as if we're going for it and see what happens.
Yeah, maybe if it was a total disaster, we could have been like, okay, guys, let's try a restart. Let's try. It would be really hard with the whole Calabria thing and stuff, but we figured maybe we can make it all happen. But anyway, so we go to sleep, we wake up in the morning, we're off at 4 o'clock in the morning. And so the plan was, we were like, there's no way we can go back through those mudslides. There's just no way. My bike is now broken. So let's just get back down. We'll get on the railroad tracks, and if we run into the railroad people, we'll just be like, look, there's mudslides over there. Look at my broken bike.
Ask for grace.
Yeah, we'll just like, is it okay that we have to get out on the train?
Sure.
That was kind of on the train tracks. That was our plan. But anyway, we get started, and like 5 minutes into the hike, Dan comes sprinting up behind us, and he's like, guys, wheeze, because he just killed himself trying to catch us, And it's like, it turns out the train, it looks like it's going to be running.
It was clear and it's running.
So all of this, somehow they get it running after one day, and all of this pain and agony that we suffered was for nothing.
But it made a great story.
So now we're on day one, and we've got these splits, so now, okay, wow.
Our plan one, we're going to take the train out to Silverton. We've got to contact the crew. We have to get them all back in their original spots, and we've got to, get this thing rolling.
It's go time.
It's happening.
Yeah. And can I tell you, it never would have worked. The other plan, It would have been a total disaster.
Would have been
Sure.
Yeah. Oh yeah. Like trying to get down those tracks. And
Such a
we would have been at least 2-3 hours behind. It would have just destroyed the whole thing.
Would have destroyed us.
Yeah.
So forget that.
So anyway,
that was never a need to be.
So anyway, we get going up Chicago Basin. And, I mean, it's, we've got good weather. It's nice and everything, but, we get to the top of our first peak, and I'm already super concerned because we completely missed our first split by a lot. Like we're supposed
by like 15 minutes.
By like 15 minutes. It may not sound like a huge amount, but we've got this really tight schedule, and it was based on us getting to the train pretty close to when it got there. We can't miss the train,
Right.
You have to make the train.
Yeah. So if we're behind 10-15 minutes per peak, aside from Eolus, the North Eolus, then that's a big deal, because now you're rushing to get the train. And Andrew, he, our splits are specific to the train schedule. So we really can't be that far off. So, doing a couple peaks, we're a little bit behind, 10 minutes here, 10 minutes there. And then he did, I guess in 2015, he did the Eolus to North Eolus in 14 minutes, and we did it in 15. So we were only a minute behind there. So that wasn't bad, but
anything that required us to go uphill is where we were just not hitting the split. We just didn't have those legs for whatever reason, Yeah,
we could have been tired from the day before, who knows?
Maybe that 2015 Andrew was really strong.
Yeah.
That's true. Yeah, we hate that guy.
But once we got back down to, our campsite, we realized, doing the math, like, hey, we've got to go about 4 miles an hour all the way down to catch the train to
It
make
doesn't
this.
sound like a lot, but that does mean we're running and
Jogging.
not
We're
walking down,
jogging.
you know, and we didn't
Yeah.
want to be running, you know, plus not to mention our feet were started wet. And so I've already got blisters and I'm like, geez, why do I have to have blisters on day one? I mean, it's
Right.
just so annoying, you know?
Mhm.
And so anyway, we run and I'm constantly checking the distance on my phone and the
It's a
time,
constant
and
check.
we can't slow down. There's no time to
You
really
can't
go pee,
eat, you can't
stop and get more
pee,
water.
you can't get water. You're
Yeah.
just going. You have
Yeah.
no time to stop.
Yeah, so then we get down and we have to like unlock the bikes, you know, get the bikes down. And now we've got a mile left and we hear the train, give it the big horn blast,
Mhm.
and we're racing on the other side of the river. We're going as fast as we can, and we literally come across the bridge as the train arrives. Meanwhile, Dan's over here freaking out, thinking that he's gonna like have to like lay across the tracks and be like, "I'm not moving," you know. And so thankfully, he didn't have to pull anything drastic like that, you know.
Well, that had to be a
Yes,
good
so that was
feeling.
our day one.
Yeah, well, that was the first part of day
Yeah, the
one.
first part of
You
day
know,
one.
so we make the train tracks, we get on there, and there was a lot of relief that we made it.
Yeah.
Yep.
But I was like, geez, we really had to expend a lot of energy to get to this
Sure.
point. You know,
Yeah.
the previous day, having to run down the whole way,
It's
you
not
know,
ideal.
not ideal, you know.
Mhm.
So that said, we're back on plan A, and you know, we take the train, we get to Silverton, and now this complicated handoff plan is in action. You know, so we get in the Beast. That's the name of Dan's van that we're using.
Okay.
We
Okay.
get in the Beast, and of course now with our speedy, you know, plan that I had concocted, you know, we're supposed to be doing all of our transition in the van while it's moving. You know,
Sure.
so step one for me, I want to take care of these stupid blisters. You know, so I'm in there and I'm trying to like tape these blisters, you know. And meanwhile, it's like slam and then slam, you know, it's like this thing's going around these corners, you know. And we realized really quickly that this whole plan of like trying to do these transitions while we're in the moving vehicle, it's not going to work. Like at one point, I just needed like, I don't know, like my hat or something. And it was like 4 bags deep. And I'm like digging under, trying to get there, unzip something, and I rip off a nail and I'm, you know, still getting slammed. It was just a total
Mhm.
like chaotic disaster.
Yeah.
You know, we didn't know where
Yeah.
anything was.
So it was just
Yeah.
disorganized, and we were, you know, so until we had our whole crew together, which would come in the next couple of days,
Yeah.
it was disorganized.
It was very disorganized. So then this is now we're getting to one of the things that was a super highlight for us is, you know, we get to the base of Ophir Pass, and for the first time we're going to see this OHV in action, you know. So we get into the back of the OHV, and the driver's name is John. We mentioned him, and he actually brought along a buddy who's a mechanic, just in case there's any troubles. His name was also John. He's in the front too. We get strapped in the back, and we're not talking about like a seatbelt here. We're talking about full on chest harness. Like we're getting to the back of like Top Gun. You know what I mean? Like getting like, so we are harnessed in, and then John takes off, and we are like, holy crap, you know, this guy is moving, you know. So this guy is like, I mean, it felt like we're in a race car driver, you know, as he's driving us
One
up
of the
over
highlights of kind
overpass.
of
Yeah.
our crew, and
Yeah.
like one of the you know, just really cool aspects of what we had in addition to our crew this year. Yeah.
And for me, it was immediately this thought I had, you know, I was watching him up there, you know, he's working these, you know, there was something up here he was hitting with his hand a lot, and, you know, he dialed it in. And then the navigator guy over there is like, he's working the screen there. He actually, you know, on these OHVs, you can have a navigator that will call out to you, like how sharp the next turn's going to be, stuff like that. So you don't overshoot these turns and stuff. It was really amazing. But watching them, I felt like I was in the back of the Millennium Falcon, and that we got Han Solo and Chewie, and they're, you know, making all the, you know, the calculations to go to light speed, and then you're off. So we started calling them Han and Chewie, and the OHV will, you know, we referred to as the Falcon, you know.
Yeah.
We had the Falcon. So, and that was amazing. They got us up and over Ophir Pass very quickly.
Okay.
But Ophir, the town of Ophir on the other side has these rules. You can't have 8 OHVs. So they had to drop us off to my mom. And Megan was another support crew member. They picked us up on the other side. When we got in their cars, oh my gosh, it felt like we were going 1 mile an hour. I was like, Mom, past that Suburban,
Right.
you know, go. You know, and so anyway, they got us to Kilpacker. Trailhead, which was the trailhead for the Wilsons. And then we got off and we're off on the Wilsons.
Mhm.
So, you know, anyway, so sorry, I've been talking a lot. And
No, that's a humongous day one.
yeah. So this is day one. I mean, basically the day one ends with the Wilsons. The Wilsons are hard. We had a great run on the Wilsons, you know, they're technical. I would have to say the one thing that happened that kind of affected us there was we had this nice glissade, but Andrea, when she glissaded, she let her pants rise up. And so she got herself a nice little glissading burn on her butt.
Yeah,
And,
so I would say, one of the hardest things in the record these first 4 days was it felt like every day something was, slamming me. And so this first day was glissading off of Mount Wilson, and I has had shorts on, and I, remember Andrew's glissading burn in 2015, and I was like, oh, am I gonna get burned? And we were like, well, the snow is not really rock hard, it'll be fine. And so, I start glissading, and I just with shorts on and snow, it's just never a good idea to glissade. And so
wait, whoa. That not false statement. Glissading is really good.
I said
Glissading is fun.
Oh, with shorts on.
Yeah.
Oh, okay. Well, I
Yeah.
thought you said it's never a good idea to glissade, and
No, with
I actually
shorts
really
on.
love
With running
yeah.
shorts.
Yeah.
Okay.
It's really critical for anyone listening.
Yeah.
When you glissade,
You gotta have
don't want to
pants.
let your skin touch the snow.
Yeah.
You know what I mean? It's really important. And so that's when you get those burns, is like your pants right up. It's better to have long pants on, honestly.
Yeah.
You know?
So
But I was really proud of Andrea because she's always been a little bit afraid of glissading. And so she was really coming out of her shell and going for it, you know, and so
there's
she,
certain places where I do love glissading, and it has to be, where there's no consequences at the end and the snow is soft enough where I could break. But, being on like harder snow where there's rocks at the bottom where I could potentially lose control, I'm definitely more timid than Andrew is. And so during this first day, one of the first things that got thrown at me that would plague me for the rest of the attempt was this burn that I got on my butt. And so that was really just difficult to deal with because it was just this open skin wound now that was pretty large, on my left butt cheek that would just kind of just plague me. And so, and then, the next day it would be a rock fall on my leg, and then the day after that or 2 days later would be a rock fall on my face. And so it was just there were definitely I just
again, she's jumping ahead a little bit.
being slammed, but we should go a little faster. But yeah, so I just feel like that there were a lot of just issues that would just kind of plague us throughout.
A lot of challenges. Yeah.
Yes,
and I'm always interested in just you guys stick to itiveness or just moving forward through whatever. I mean, like the redo day, that sounds like a great idea. Let's put this off for a couple weeks, guys. And you guys are just like, no, we're just going to go for it.
Yeah.
Yeah, it would have been nice to have that redo day, honestly. But yeah, it's just those schedules are just so hard to deal with. You know what I mean? Like, we've got jobs, it's just like we don't have infinite time. If we did, that would be a lot easier to pull off for sure.
Yeah. So I would say for us, like, days 1 through 4 were pretty hard. They were pretty like go. For the most part, I mean, the Creststones day was day 4, and that's when we really started falling behind. I really felt like I was starting to have some breathing issues there, but up until that day, and even so after the Creststones day, we were just a few hours behind on our splits. And so I feel like that it was up until that day where things were going, we were working hard to slam ourselves into the ground. And so I feel like that, talking about just being able to push through and move forward, I feel like, what do you think, starting after like the Creststones day, was when we really feel like we had to kind of dig deep and dig ourselves out of this hole we were building ourselves.
Yeah, I would say, we sort of talked through day 1, and then day 2 was more or less went to plan. You know what I mean? We got through all those peaks according to plan. We got to Calabria a little bit late. Then we had this big day, the Little Bear Blanca group. That's actually a really big day. Just, we've got the Little Bear Blanca traverse. It's like a classic traverse there.
For sure.
Um, and yeah, so yeah, I'm on day 3, sorry. And then and actually where I think it all kind of started falling apart was actually when we're standing on Blanca.
Yeah.
We've completed the Little Bear Blanca traverse. This is day 3. And we did Ellingwood. We're back on Blanca. It's about 7 o'clock p.m. So we've got 2 hours. We have this kind of intimidating ridge in front of us called the Gash Ridge.
Mm.
It's the most technical thing in the entire challenge. It's like, it's because it includes like a 5-4 or 5-6 down climb on this ridge.
Okay.
And we really wanted to get done with that with as much light as possible. So we have 2 hours of light. We got to get to Lindsay and we're out and we're done for the day, right? So this is the goal. And it was a beautiful day, but then all of a sudden we had this weird cloud system move in and it was blowing. It was cool looking,
It was pretty.
it was
We took
blowing
some
this,
pretty cool
these
pictures.
clouds up and over the ridge, kind of like, you see these pictures like on Everest where you see this plume. So we've got this plume blowing over the ridge. It's cold air, super cold air. And I had told Andrea, okay, all we got to do is get down past this down climb, and then it's a piece of cake. Man, do I remember that wrong? Because yeah, we got through the down climb and it just stayed tedious and really hard.
It's so interesting
time
because a
consuming.
long time ago
Yeah.
we had up climbed that together, but gosh, that was so long ago. And I hardly remembered. So I just took Andrew's word for it. I was like, oh God, we up climbed this forever ago. I was so young then. I did fine. Can't be that hard.
Must have been easy.
When Andrew was like, oh, just, a couple tedious sections and, it should go pretty fast. But I mean, we were on that ridge for a couple hours of just, hard class 4, class 5 climbing.
And we kept waiting for it to get easier and it never did. It just stayed tedious and hard. And at one point, Andrea grabs a rock and it
crushes my
her
face and then falls onto my leg and rolls off my leg and totally just scrapes up my entire leg. And it was just one of those moments that could have gone really, really bad.
Could have been a disaster, but we just lucked out there. So she was a little shook up there.
Yeah, I was like, what the heck?
Meanwhile, we're racing because, at one point, this ridge will totally change character. It goes from super tedious and annoying to a big grassy field, and then you're off, And so we're just trying to get to that grass before dark. And it was really stressful. Like I said, it was like kind of this like half whiteout, and so anyway, we battle, we get to that grass right as it gets dark, but now I didn't realize like my phone was on in my pocket and it's down to like 7%. And I really, Lindsay's been off limits to the public for several years now.
Years since we've been on that peak.
I've completely like forgotten the rest of this route. You know what I mean? And so, but now I'm afraid to turn my phone on, look at the route. I don't want to go to zero.
Sure.
So we're trying to do it in the dark. And I did make a couple of like nav errors, so I was getting really frustrated with myself.
But it's interesting, like, he's always really hard on himself with nav errors, but gosh, we're so fluid in the mountains together. And really, when it's just us two, I know he'll always feel some pressure, but there is no pressure. Like, it's just us in the mountains. So that's the beauty of doing this thing together, is like, we're just fluid together and we're just out there together. And so I think one of the hardest parts was, during Lindsay on this mountain, when we didn't know a couple of our crew members were gonna, come meet us up at the top. And we just felt a lot of pressure to, navigate through Mount Lindsay in the dark and the mistakes that were being made and the comments being made of, navigation.
Well, so, I made those nav errors. We got back on track and we get up to about 13,000 feet on Lindsay. It's now dark and we see some headlights up there. And it was 2 of the crew members, Dan and his dad, were up there. And there wasn't really supposed to be any crew up here on this one. But so
we just didn't know anyone else was up there. We were expecting just a night for us to just be up there.
So we met up with them and then, it was just there's this weird comment. It really got into my head about how slow we had been. And it was like, man, we are trying our best and we're
actually pretty proud of ourselves of how we did in the gash and the weather and being on hard terrain all day. Little Bear, Blanca Traverse, Grass Ridge, going up Little Bear, it's all really hard terrain.
I found myself trying to justify why it had taken so long, but man, we're at the end of like 3 days here. We shouldn't have to be justifying like why we were so slow. I mean, it was hard, like we got our asses kicked, basically. So anyway, now we're going up Lindsay, and they decide they're going to come up with us. You know, the 14er rules are like, you can have people with you when you're within a 3,000-foot boundary of these peaks, but they have to stay behind you and they can be observers. And so if you make some critical mistake, they're supposed to keep quiet about it. You know what I mean? They're supposed to let you figure it out on your own. These are just these rules that have been grandfathered in from Cave Dog's attempt back in 2000. And so anyway, we get going up there, and I immediately get off route. You know what I mean? And oh, well, first of all, I wasn't taking the route I wanted. I wanted to go up the ridge, but I kind of felt this weird pressure to take the gully route, more of the standard route. You know, just because everyone was there and they were more comfortable with that route.
Yeah,
So
we just felt this weird pressure of
Yeah.
making them feel
Yeah.
comfortable.
Yeah. So anyway, I'm taking this route that I haven't done in like 20 years. And pretty soon I'm lost. And Dan asked me, he's like, "Hey, can I give you route advice?" And I was like, "No, you definitely can't give me route advice." And you know, a couple minutes go by. It's like, can I at least shine my light somewhere? And I'm like, "You can't shine your light for me because that's giving me, you know, the direction. No, you can't do that." And so now it's gotten in my head. It's like, obviously I'm lost and they know I'm lost and they're worried. I see them kind of climbing off to the right, and I'm like, I just go as fast as I can off to the left. You know, I just want to get away.
Yeah,
You
so
know,
we just
I'm totally
so we
frazzled
just
right now,
we're
you
just
know?
like, if we, head straight up, we're gonna hit the top.
Yeah.
So we just
Yeah.
go up.
So we at one point we just head straight up, and I don't know where we were. You know, we go up and we get to the false summit. We marked that as the summit, almost make the mistake of going down there. Fortunately,
Oof.
we didn't.
Yeah.
That would have been a disaster. But on the way down, I'm like, I try to get rid of these distractions, and I'm like, I'm just taking the ridge down, guys. Sorry, I'm taking the ridge. And so, we took the ridge. I had to vent to them a little bit later. I was like, guys, it really put me in a weird headspace having you there questioning the route. I mean, that's just the way it is. You have to let me make mistakes, so anyway, I felt kind of like a jerk when I vented, but I think I needed to say that, and they were really apologetic, and everything was fine. But anyway, so
It's a stressful situation
yeah,
to have anyone
yeah,
else on that
right.
mountain
And
with
it's
us.
why a lot of times
Yeah.
we prefer, just on these technical ones, we really just prefer to be on our own for the most part, because then we're not responsible for other people.
Sure. Yeah.
I hate to
Yeah.
get other people in like life-threatening situations,
Especially
you
when
know?
we're tired, we're not
Yeah.
even thinking clearly.
Yeah.
So now we're up there with
Yeah.
people, and we feel responsible. We're not in a great head mental space. We haven't slept in 3 days. We're brain fried from being on technical terrain all day. It's just not a good situation all around.
So anyway, we make it down, Lindsay, and at this point, it's not a disaster. We're probably pretty close to our expected splits, actually. And but we had really tired ourselves out on that one. It was really stressful. And so, the next day was this Crestones day. And we've done the couples FKT on this route. We can blast through those
We
peaks
did
in
it in
like 7 hours.
and 45 minutes.
And just going up the first peak there, we just it
It
was
was
bad
like we were
news.
like an hour
Yeah,
behind.
our legs weren't working. And just getting up to Humboldt was a real challenge. And I just had this really bad feeling like, oh man, our legs are toast. Like the whole day is going to be like this. Looking at like, normally once you're up high up there, you're up at like 13,000 feet. Usually Kit Carson, Crestones, it's only like 1,000 feet. They've never looked so big to me ever,
We just knew the work ahead of us,
Yeah.
and
Yeah.
it made the mountains look
Yeah.
so big and so
Yeah.
intimidating.
And Andrea and I were both really emotional on top of Humboldt. And I remember I actually wrote a message to the 14ers forum telling people, hey, we're really hurting. Andrea could sure use some encouragement. And so then a few hours later, we're on Kit Carson, and we have service again. And we look at some of these messages people wrote, and it actually made us both kind of tear up, just.
It made us so
Yeah.
emotional, like just
Yeah.
the confidence that the community had in us to finish this project and to keep going, and that we can do it, and that we can stay strong. And I mean, and the text messages that came through, and the video messages from friends and family. I mean, it was just incredible.
Wow.
And really, it was the community that really helped keep us going here.
But we're pushing. It's still a disaster though, because now we get on. The next peak was like Crestone Peak, and actually that was my 1,000th peak. And I celebrated that 1,000, like 14er, by knocking a rock down in Andrea's face, which fortunately she blocked, but it shredded her new Arc'teryx jacket. It's like she's got feathers flying around everywhere. That was a sad moment. She did get a little bump on her head. So I was worried about her for a second, but so then we've got this traverse to do, we get through the Crestones traverse and get down. And, honestly, for people watching, it might not have seemed like, maybe we're an hour or two off our splits or something, but we knew yeah, the whole plan was out
Like
at this
we
point.
needed
Yeah,
to,
we were
we needed
toast.
to
Yeah,
figure out
yeah,
figure out a different plan and
yeah,
start thinking about, well, okay, some new times and
yeah,
some new plans, just because
yeah.
Andrew's
Yeah.
9-day plan isn't
Yeah,
happening.
normally this
Yeah.
is about halfway through. We'd be about halfway done if we were on that super aggressive plan.
Mm.
Uh, but as it was, now we actually did have, we had warned everybody at that crew meeting about how difficult day 4 is. Day 4
Really?
always seems to be a
Killer.
problem.
With
Yeah,
everyone who ever
yeah,
attempts this
yeah. If you look
record.
back at all the history, you'll see people are blasting through, very similar schedule to what we had the first 3 days. It's very similar times. You're
You're
coming
on
out,
a tight
yeah, on
schedule,
a
and
tight
so you
schedule, yeah,
blast through
yeah.
the first 3-4 days
And
of
then you
this
get to like
record.
that day 4 and day 5, and your body swells up, your
Mm.
breathing goes to hell. You've
Mm.
basically, you do have some sort of HAPE that forms
Mm.
just because you're moving so fast. So you're trying to work through those sort of symptoms. And knowing this, we had planned for our PT guy to be at Pikes. You know what I mean? So he's going to be there for the first time. He's got the table set up. He's ready to tape us and doctor us up. And Pikes is this beautifully timed. It's a nighttime peak, but it's a relatively easy peak now. You've been
It's
now
kind
for
of a recovery
days
peak.
on these
Right.
exposed technical peaks. You'd think we'd be comfortable, but actually we get in this shell shock state where we just don't want anything to do with technical. We don't want any exposure. Our arms get shaky. We're just not our normal selves. So Pikes comes at a great time.
Yeah.
Mm.
So anyway, he throws us onto, oh, and I'm probably talking too much again. I'm sorry. Let me pause for a second. Just let you jump in. Sorry.
No,
Yeah,
please. You guys are doing
in my
great.
leg here. Yeah.
Please keep it going. I love this.
Okay. All right.
Like, do you
Yeah.
have any questions for
Yeah.
us so
Yeah.
far?
Yeah.
No, no, I'm just along for the ride, you guys. This is awesome.
Awesome. Awesome. Okay. Okay. Well, then I shall continue.
Please.
And yeah, so Pikes, I still remember, Chris got me out on the table, and at first I was cold, and then someone put this warm blanket on me, and oh my God, I was in heaven. And with him, you're just supposed to say totally relaxed, and he's just like, stretching you out and working on, any injured spots and stuff like that.
Yeah,
And
it was cool. We had a couple friends show up, but it was here where I was starting to develop this like uncontrollable cough, and I just
Mm.
couldn't get that under control. I was just having these coughing fits, and
That's what had started slowing her down on the Crestones, was like she
yeah,
was
I
having
was just
trouble
having
breathing,
like trouble
Yeah.
getting in a
Yeah.
full breath, and so that's where like my breathing issues kind of all started. And so I was kind of embarrassed in the state that I was in, with all of these people who showed up at Pikes to support us. And Noelle, who is known as like the cookie hiker, she brought us a bunch of cookies and macarons, and a bunch of people, they were all standing around a fire, I remember. And our two friends, Jamie and Ella, had showed up. They were planning on hiking Pikes with us, which was an amazing emotional boost for us. But it was almost just, I was embarrassed because I was in this state of just such a poor state where I couldn't even be excited about the people who were there to come support us. I was just worried about surviving. And that's kind of how I would be for the remainder of the record, is just surviving and making it through, and seeing how I could just take it a mountain at a time. So I think that was probably one of the hardest things that night, was just being in the state I was in and not being able to be excited for the people who were there to support us and who showed up for us.
I would say we were feeling very humbled. The mountains do have a way of humbling you, and we were feeling kind of ashamed and embarrassed at like how our pace, how weak we were at that moment, already.
I mean, I think
And
like our
yeah,
pace up to that point wasn't horrendous.
yeah,
I mean,
yeah, but we knew it was dropping off, and
we
we
knew
were
it
beat
was
up.
dropping,
Yeah,
but I think Andrew was more focused on, being really upset about the pace, whereas me, I was more upset about the condition that my body was in. It's like I knew we were hiking slower, but I mean, we weren't days behind our record pace yet, you know. It's like it's not like we were days and days behind. We were hours behind, and
Right.
that was fine, you know. But for me, it was more of the condition that I was in that I was more kind of upset about, you know, more so than our pace that we were just a few hours off of.
Yeah, and so now we're doing pikes, and it was originally the original aggressive plan. We were supposed to start it in the light, which would have just been beautiful because that would, if you can just start it and get a few hours of the climb in the daylight, it just makes it so much easier than when you start in the dark. It's like such a big chore to have this. As long as it's, I sorry, pikes is still pretty long from that side. You know, it's like 11 miles. Oh, it just feels like it takes forever. You know, so fortunately we had Jamie and Ella hiking with us, and so we were kind of giving them the whole spiel, you know, like the whole mudslide story. You know, we're telling them everything that's gone wrong so far. Andrea was struggling because it's dark. You know, those are night times are usually hard for her. She's staying positive, but it was hard. And actually, one of the highlights for me on this whole adventure was we were at the top of Pikes at the new monument for the summit, you know, and there's this like concrete seating, and we were kind of taking cover from the wind behind it. And Andrea was like just trying to get in a quick like 1 minute nap, you know, up there out of the wind. And I was like, I would have her open her mouth and I'd stuff in a little macaroon cookie, you know, and then she'd chew, and then I'd stuff in
And
another
repeat.
one. Yeah, chew and repeat. And these cookies were so tasty. Yeah, Cookie Lady needs to bring a lot more cookies next time because
Cookie
those were
lady.
gone really quickly, you
Yeah.
know.
Oof.
Yeah. So, you know, so anyway, so we finished Pikes, and now the whole A plan is out the window. It was really a tight schedule for where we were going to be going after that. So we decided to go back to my old plan that I used in 2015, which was to head to the Southern Sawatch, knock off some of those easier peaks, and have that set up your timing for going to the Elks, you know. So at this point, you know, the aggressive plan's kind of ripped up, and we're just trying, we're kind of like on this, let's just try to survive, you know, let's try
Yep.
not
Survival
to
mode.
waste time. Survival mode, you know. We're still moving okay. According to our splits, we're still looking really good. Like we were still, you know, right on line with my old times. You know what I mean? Like
Sure.
still right on target. So we head over to Shaft Tab Antero, and we use one of Dan's tricks, which I never really would have considered. In hindsight, I don't know that it saves a lot of time, but it does save some elevation for us. And what you do is having this OHV as a weapon, you can actually drive up to Browns Lake, which is between
Huh.
Tabawatch and Antero. Now, that's not quite low enough for your starting point. So what you do once you get there, we have to actually hike down the Browns Lake Trail for just a couple hundred feet. And once we're 3,000 feet below Shivano, then we can mark that as our starting point.
Okay. Okay.
So anyway, it's this long drive. It wouldn't work without like an OHV. It would just take, it's a rough road. It would take too long, but with that vehicle, it makes it worth it, you know?
Okay.
So John drives us up there, and then he ends up hiking Tabawatch and Shivano with us. You know, we're going up. This is like sort of the north to south route up Tabawatch and Shivano.
Or up
Okay.
Nolans.
Or yeah, it's like
Yep.
the Nolans route there. So this is
Yep.
like, we feel like Nolans is our home territory. You know, we
Sure.
love it.
Yeah.
It ends up kicking our butt in this whole thing, but you know, we feel comfortable in there. We know the routes and stuff. So we do Shivano, Tabawatch. It's really hot. Go over, get Antero, and then meanwhile, John had moved the vehicle to pick us up 3,000 feet below Antero. You know, so we
And
knock
it's
off
kind of
those
fun
three.
that our friend Sydney, she was able to hike up.
Mm.
She got a ride with John up to like the very like
Yeah.
up like 500 feet below the summit of Antero, and she met us there and did the rest of Antero with us, which was really fun. She plays actually a vital role coming
Yeah,
up here.
she does. And actually, let
Mm.
me mention something about Sydney. Is like she's kind of like our adopted daughter. We call her
Mhm.
Mm.
because when she was 11, I started taking her hiking up 14ers with my boys when they were younger, and so she kind of got introduced to the mountains from us. So she's kind of like, you know, and now once a year we usually take her and my son Axel, and we just go completely kick their butts in the mountains somewhere on some big trip.
Yeah,
You know, yeah.
so this was kind of payback for
Yeah,
us
she's gonna
because
get some payback in this
yeah, because
story.
we were
Yeah.
getting our ass kicked, and
Yeah.
she's the one
I
encouraging
would
us.
always joke that it wasn't a successful trip until I had all the kids in tears, you know, and so oh yeah, the payback is coming, you know. But anyway, so she joins us on Antero. You know, we get back down to John. he drives us down, and now we're gonna do Princeton, you know.
Okay. Yep.
And so Princeton, oh, actually, you know, at the base of Antero, we did a cold plunge in the cold water there.
Dang,
And
nice.
and for me personally, this was hard for me because at this point, you know, I hadn't mentioned that my body's really swollen up at this point. My legs are like twice their size. You can't see any muscle tone in them. They're just totally swollen. And my belly's really distended too
Yeah,
with
he
this
was really
selling.
starting to get really
Yeah,
worried about that.
I was so embarrassed like to like go cold plunging because it was like, oh my God, look at me, you know, I'm a monster, you know. And so anyway, yeah,
Just like holding a lot of water.
what's that?
Just
It's
like
just
holding
your
a lot of
body,
water.
you know, from all the
Oh,
trauma, your body's just
yeah,
swells up. And so,
yeah.
you know, what happens is just that, you know, you're doing these mountains after mountains, and then you kind of get in the car and you rest a little bit and your body just starts to swell. It's just the
It
trauma
is. Yeah, yeah.
of going for and doing these extreme, you know, days on your feet. And
Yeah.
so it's really just the trauma response for your body.
It's something that anyone doing this record is going to face. I know Drew, the younger guy, Drew Francis, who's tried this a couple times. He also has these big swelling problems like I do.
Mm.
And we don't, you know, it's just so hard. It's actually these big rests you get when your body, it's like punishes you. For example, going to Pikes, you get a couple hours of sleep, and then leaving Pikes, you get a couple hours. And it's that stopping period where you start filling up with all this fluid. And it's terrible, you know. And it's like it really got into my head, like, you know, should I be going on? You know, I
Sure.
have dealt with this in the past, you know, the swelling. But we were hoping that jumping in the cold water was going to help with the inflammation response and stuff like that. I do feel like that's a lot to ask of a simple cold plunge at that point when you're that swollen. You know what I mean? I don't think it's going to fix it. But it did feel good in the heat, you know, to kind of get in the cold water, you know.
Yep.
And yeah, so then from there we were driving to Princeton, and at the base of Princeton there was actually a lot of people that had shown up. So Homie from the, you know, Prater, I had mentioned him already.
Yep.
And so he was there. We had Chris Fisher, who gave the record a go like last year, was there,
Yep.
and his
Yeah.
girlfriend Erin Tunn, who just gave Nolan's a shot. So a lot of people were there at the base. Meanwhile, I'm just a wreck. So I'm over on the PT table. You know, Chris is getting me all taped up. He's reassuring me that it's okay to go, even though my body's completely swollen. He's like, you can do it. And it was really good for my mental like headspace just to hear it from him that, hey, I'm gonna be okay. It's okay, you know,
Yeah.
you can
Yeah,
keep
that was
going.
important for
Yeah.
Andrew. And then, you know, we hiked up, we had a lot of people with us, our friends, Matt and Laura, they met us up there and they were hiking with us. And
We
then
had a
we
whole
had some
crew up
people
there.
from our crew
Yeah.
were hiking with us.
Yeah.
And at the top, it was a beautiful sunset, and it was just a really cool kind of atmospheric feel. And at that time my breathing was pretty good on Princeton. So I was kind of excited for, you know, feeling like I was getting my lungs back a little bit. And so the next day we were headed to
So the next day, yeah, so
the pyramid.
we're headed to the Elks, you know, so we're actually
This is the killer.
exactly on my old pace, you know, because
Okay.
it was the same thing.
Okay.
We were actually a little bit later coming off of Princeton, but when our start time is going to be on the Elks, we were going to be starting at exactly the same time. So we're still on pace, but now we've got the Elks. And I'll tell you, most of the people that do this record don't even get to the Elks because they're scary. You know what I mean? Like,
Sure. Yeah.
you know, you've had all these other big days.
Well, not
And
even like scary. They're steep and they're big.
Mhm.
And so it's like they're a lot of elevation and they're technical. And so they just are, it's just this huge, you know, you're doing so well. And then you just kind of get slammed in the face with these huge technical peaks that really just wreck you.
yeah,
And yeah, so we get there, you know, we get to Pyramid. It's come early morning and we get kicked out of the car and I'm still exhausted and I'm just not really sure how we're gonna head up Pyramid and even survive the day, you know.
yeah.
And we, you know, we had a little mishap with some gear and like crampons versus micro spikes, and you know, so we had a little, you know, frustration moment in the amphitheater. But after that, we kind of picked up the pace up to the saddle. And so we actually were hiking about 2,000 feet an hour, and we had a really good pace going, and finally getting to the top of Pyramid. This was kind of where we had to kind of just give it a go. We had done a couple scouting trips on the west side of Pyramid, which is where we were descending, but the specific route we were taking, we were kind of doing on a whim. And we knew about halfway down where we were going, and then the other half was like, hey, let's go through this rock field that we saw, a few weeks ago. It might be better than the route we took previously. Let's give it a go. And it just ended up taking a lot of energy out of us. It ended up not being smooth, and it took a long time, not a super long time, but it took a lot of energy out of us. And so by the time we reached the base and we got to our crew, we were hot, we were tired, and we were hurting. And so we had this big resupply before we started up South Maroon, and it was just in the heat of the day. And so I was starting to get worried. And as we all started up South Maroon, Dan and Dave, hiked a little bit with us, which was kind of nice to have their company. We realized that we were going kind of slow. And by the time we got to the top of South Maroon, we were experiencing some breathing issues again. And I was realizing that I was wheezing, and Andrew finally, for the first time, was understanding where I was coming from, where you couldn't really take that full deep breath in, and you couldn't get in a full breath. And so I was starting to wheeze, he was wheezing, and he was making up different characters for all his different types of wheezes.
I had like
that he
high-pitched
has.
wheezes and low-pitched wheezes, and they were like my wheezing buddies,
Yeah. In the meantime, I'm like freaking out, I'm like, he's having these wheezing buddies, and I'm like, oh my God, I can't breathe.
Andrea does have a lot of anxiety on this sort of stuff. It was like, oh my God,
just want to make sure that I'm okay, and that I'm going to be able to continue, because the last thing I want to do is have something like this take me out. I don't want that. We know too many people who start these things and quit, and I didn't want to be in that category. I don't want to quit. We're not quitters, and we want to be doers of our word, and we want to follow through with the things that we say we're going to do. And so I get a lot of anxiety thinking, oh my gosh, is this going to take me out, or is this going to ruin me? And so crossing over the Bells Traverse, we did it in about an hour and 15 minutes, which was pretty good. We have done it in 45 minutes both ways. And so, compared to our fastest splits, we were very slow, but with the situation we were in, we did pretty good. But it was really difficult, because I specifically remember it was like step, climb, break, break for 5 seconds, and
we're
have
having
to
a break.
breathe. And we never really have to take a break on that traverse. And so just the fact that we couldn't be consistent in our climbing was scary to me. And so we get to North Maroon, and we're calling my sister, and we're calling Andrew's sister, and we're just like, we need to hightail it out of the Elks. Like, these are kicking our ass. We're not going to make it or see this record through if we stay in the Elks. And so
because a super aggressive plan would have you continue on over to Capitol and Snowmass. There's different ideas, but for us, it was like we were just exhausted, and we're moving so slow. And so we contacted the crew, and unfortunately, I think they were already setting up like the vehicle for the next leg and stuff like that. So a lot of wasted effort on their part. But we were like, gosh, we might just be exhausted. We might just need some rest. We might need some rest, and maybe we need some easier peaks, because these ones just kicked our butts. And so we come up with this idea. Let's go back to the Saltwatch. Let's go. Try
so we'll break up the Elks, but knowing we have to come back, at least we're gonna get a little bit of a break.
So we describe it to people as turning our tail and running.
We kind of had to hide.
Hey, I'm gonna step outside for just a sec to get my battery cord. Okay.
Yeah, please.
So I can talk a little bit. So after we were kind of on the phone with Andrew's sister on the top of North Maroon, and she's encouraging us like, hey, it's gonna be okay, but she is warning us about taking a big break, and she doesn't want us, because we told her we needed to have a little bit of a break before we start our next peaks. But I don't know, I don't remember if Andrew just mentioned this, but when you take a big break, your body starts to swell.
Yeah.
And that's when your body kind of just gets in this like rebellious mode when you take these big long breaks. Like 2-3 hours, that's okay. But when you're talking 4, 5, 6 hours, that's when your body just starts to freak out. And so but we needed this mental reset. We needed a break from these super technical peaks. And so heading to the Sawatch, we were trying to find that balance of taking a few hours of break, but also not letting ourselves swell up too much.
Sure.
So anyway, so we
So,
are,
so on that drive, my
yeah.
sister gave us this. She's like, I don't know if that's a good idea.
Is that charging?
Hold on one second.
Yeah.
I would say yes, it is charging. Okay. So yeah, so we're going over, and it was, and I told my sister, look, I understand it's a big risk, I understand. And but our legs aren't working, like what can we do? And so we're gonna try, Massive and Albert, let's go try those guys and see if they can get us back on track, right? And so on the drive over there, I almost choked to death, like on my, on my breathing.
So I kind of feel like that I was recovering a little bit, and because he was having such a hard time, I kind of had to get out of my head and put myself and kind of take care of him. So I'm like coaching him through breathing, and he's just like gasping for air. He can't even,
Yeah.
I mean, it's the scariest thing ever.
It
And
sucks.
it was at that point where I was like, this is totally insane. What are we doing? Why are we putting ourselves through this? We are done. Like, we are finished. We're quitting. We're not continuing on. I mean, Andrew was in such a bad place, and I was super tired. I felt like my lungs were shot, and I'm just like, we are just beating our body to shit for
Yeah.
what? What is the
Mhm.
purpose of this?
But I felt like, I did understand, this is what happens. I've been through all this before, this
Sure.
thing where I'm gasping for breath and stuff like that. So I understand that this is your body rebelling, and I did feel like we owed it to the crew. It's like, hey, let's just get moving. We'll loosen things up a little bit, see what happens if we get going. But
And
Andrea
really,
was,
yeah, I was just
Andrea was like in the car.
not
She's like,
having
we're
it.
done. We're not going on. We're done. And so
Mm.
I get out there, and I remember, well, Andrea told them something similar.
Well,
But when I got out, I was like, guys, I'm sorry, there's like 0% chance we're gonna be going on. Sorry, And then Andrea
Whoa.
Lily had opened up the car door with like the camera in our face,
Yeah.
right? And I just looked at the camera straight square, and I was like, we're done. Like,
Yeah.
and Riley said, do you feel like you've reached your potential? And I said, no, but when you can't breathe, what else can you do? When you're mentally still in it, but your body isn't, what else can you do?
Mhm.
But again, sort of to satisfy the crew. I mean, gosh, all these people have put so much into us. It's just so hard to make that decision to quit. So to satisfy them, we're gonna start up Massive. And Riley gave me this little camera. We called it Wally. He was like our little buddy. He's like this little GoPro camera, but
Mhm.
he moves slowly, so to make it less jerky, the film.
Oh
And
yeah.
so I'm holding Wally, and he says, hey, when you get to the point where you decide to quit, will you just take a little video here for me, and say something, and mark this spot on the trail where you stopped. And so that's what we were doing. We were basically going out to find that spot where we were going to turn around.
Oof.
Andrea didn't even bring her poles. I mean, I basically had the food and stuff like that. And so we get going, and it's a little, you
Your
get
body just
moving.
does this
Yeah, your body
miraculous
likes
thing
to be
where
moving.
it likes to be
Yeah,
moving. And
yeah,
so when you start moving,
yeah,
everything loosens up again,
yeah. You
and
can breathe a
you
little
can breathe
better. Yeah,
easier. And
yeah.
so we just kept going.
It
And
still
before we knew
hurts.
it, we were summiting,
Yeah,
and we
we're
were on
pretty soon
top.
we're on top, and it was like we are kind of like, in reflecting, it's like we just never took that step where we couldn't just take one more step.
Mhm.
Just take one
Mhm.
more step. And so up there we were like, well, hey, And we still have like a huge amount of mountains of like
We
30
still have
mountains.
30 some
We're like,
mountains
let's
left.
just do one more mountain and see how it goes.
Yeah,
Let's
so
just do
it
one
just
more
became
mountain.
a game
Yeah.
about like, hey,
Mhm.
one more
One more
mountain,
mountain.
one more mountain.
Yeah.
We can do one more
Yeah.
mountain. Let's
Yeah.
see.
Yeah.
Let's do it,
If we had known what was coming, we would have been like, hell no, we're done. But at that, we were just like, let's just do one more mountain. We
Yeah.
can do it. And so we did, we did massive. And then we got down there and then John gave us a drive. And holy cow, there is one spot on this road on the backside going to the backside of Elbert. It's like the Nolan's route on Elbert, the backside. There's this road. And there is this spot with this river crossing where you're looking at like a vertical wall. It makes any of those Jaws obstacles on Lake Como look
Yeah,
like
I'm
nothing.
closing my eyes and
Look
just
like
praying we're
absolutely
not
nothing. I
toppling.
cannot believe he made it over that. Like that was
And he
insane.
made it
Yeah.
over like no big
Oh
deal.
yeah, yeah, yeah. But he
Uh,
actually said in hindsight when he was talking to Dan, he was like, Dan, you didn't tell me about that thing. So that's a big deal if
Yeah.
John's asking about something like that. But anyway, then we actually had a really great time on Elbert because Megan and Riley hiked with us and they were just really fun. We were
It was
talking
just
about
fun to
all
be with
kinds of
them.
weird things and I don't know, it was just a nice fun hike and we actually were coming down Joey Campanelli's way down and and it's nice and there's like a lots of scree and we actually had a great time on that route. So Elbert was a very positive peak, and so how somehow we're still going.
Yeah.
Somehow we're still going, and now we got to go to Holy Cross. And Holy
mhm.
Cross is kind of scary because it just has like this extra 1,000-foot climb on both ends.
Yep, yep.
And so it's longer, and we knew we were going to be in the dark on that one.
And that was definitely a pivotal
Yeah,
moment as
yeah,
well,
yeah.
in both a negative and positive
Yeah, yeah,
way.
yeah. This was a big deal, Holy Cross,
Yeah,
because
Holy
yeah,
Cross,
I'll let her talk. I
um,
talk too much.
I on the way down, I was experiencing a lot of knee pain, and that was kind of the start of what plagued me for the rest of the record attempt. It was just like this left knee pain that it started off with like a little kind of twinge and
Yeah.
I'd feel it a little bit, but then it just grew. And how the pattern of my knee pain would work was where I'd get back down to the car and my sisters had showed up, and so they would work on me and fix me up, and then by the time night would come after hiking on it all day, either my muscles would get weaker, I would have a lower tolerance for pain, and just the knee pain just would become excruciating. So I would have to suffer through these night peaks of this really intense knee pain just to get back to the van to get me fixed up. And so that was kind of the negative pivotal moment. But then the positive was both of my sisters, Lauren and Nicole, showed up, and they for the rest of the record attempt played a critical role in the crew. There were a couple days where the crew had to leave and they took over, feeding us the food that Laura had made for us, and taking care of our packs, and doctoring us up, and just kind of helping see through the plan, and hiking with us in the beginning of our some of the beginning of our hikes, and just being there, and with the mental boost. I mean, they played such a pivotal role. It was amazing. And
Yeah.
they've never crewed before. They've never done anything like this before. So we threw them to the wolves, and they were ready, and they were ready to support us. And they just brought this positive energy to the crew that everyone really loved and appreciated. And they kind of just became family with everybody. So that was really awesome. Nicole's
Cool.
a physician assistant. And so when she met me at the base of Holy Cross, she, listened to my lungs. She had my pulse ox, and she was like, you're 100%, your lungs are clear. This is all upper respiratory. She just had this
Mm,
way of just easing my anxieties and telling me
mhm,
that I was going to be okay, because I
mm.
have such a way of just getting in my own head and causing myself a lot of unnecessary anxiety that really interferes with my performance.
Sure. Yeah.
From my perspective, it went from like, well, and this knee injury thing, actually, we kind of think we know what was going on there. It was like, we think it was like this a change in her gait from that hamstring surgery. You know what I mean? So now the other legs compensating, and just over the course of this time,
Yeah, and
this
I was
knee injury
pretty
developed,
tight,
so yeah.
and so my patella wasn't really tracking the way it should have been. So,
Mm.
but it was just really cool that, you know, there were a couple moments where my sisters, they really just did a good job of cleaning me up, and, you know,
Oh yeah,
Nicole
yeah,
was
yeah.
doing
Let
my
me
hair.
mention that. It was
Yeah.
like for the first time, where was that? Oh, that was
Coming off
actually
of Missouri.
Cohesi. Yeah, so that was a little bit ahead. Yeah, my job changed. It was like my job because Andrea was in the state where she was a little touchy with me when I would try to encourage her. If I'm like, hey, you're gonna be fine, she's like, oh, my breathing. I'm like, you can breathe, you're breathing, you're gonna be fine. That doesn't work. You know what I mean? She needed to hear it from her sisters that she was going to be okay. And so like they took her pulse ox and they're like, look, your lungs are 100%. It's just upper respiratory irritation. You're fine. So that reassured her. So what I realized is, we go out on this hard day, and when Andrea would sort of be falling apart with like this knee pain or whatever, this other stuff, if I could just get her to her sisters, they had this magic ability to fix her brain. And so
Sure.
that's what I needed. And there was this one spot where I remember they sat her down and they were doing her hair like in these braids. And she's sitting in the grass, and Andrea's got this smile. And I swear she was finding this happy place from her childhood, of her sisters doing her hair. It was really amazing. She had this like smile on her face.
Well, and they
Yeah.
dressed me, and
Yeah.
they, you know, they were washing my legs and washing my face off, you know, and it's just like after you just feel so beat down and
Yeah.
so just worn out, it's like they put me in new clothes,
Yeah.
and I was, you know, they put me in a new knee brace, and they were doctoring up my knee, and I just felt like a whole new person
Yeah.
ready to go up.
Yeah. Yeah. But
What was it? It was
we
like
jumped ahead. We cannot skip out on the heart of the Sawatch today. That was the end of. Okay.
yeah.
Because I have to back up. So, we do Holy Cross. The sisters are there. They totally change the energy on the whole crew, somehow. They've got this effect on everybody. Kind of like Andrea. She's got this positive energy. And like with our cold plunge group, when we go cold plunge, if Andrea's not there, it's like, oh, something's just kind of missing. And then there's this happy, bubbly energy.
Mm-hmm.
Well, she's like the low energy one of her sisters. You know what I mean? So they come in, they just bring a lot of energy. And I think it was really good for the crew because, we were like these walking corpses, yeah, we're not bringing a whole lot of excitement.
Weren't bringing
Yeah.
anything positive to the table.
We come down off of Holy Cross. She's got this knee pain, but her sisters are there. So, okay. So what's next? Well, let's go get the heart of the Sawatch. So that's basically going to be Yale through La Plata. It's kind of the extended, what we call the heart of the Sawatch. But we love that section. There was the one time we probably think of it as our finest hiking day ever was on her 24-hour record when we blew through Columbia, Harvard, Oxford, Belford, Missouri. Man, we had a great run.
We did it in 6 hours and 55 minutes.
And that was probably the one
it was
time in our life where we
insane.
experienced that flow thing that Joey Campanelli talks about. That was it. So we like that section. So anyway, we go down to Yale and we're going to start this. And we get started up Yale. We've got her sisters in tow and Megan are there. And so we're starting up Yale. The minute they leave us, though, I don't know. It's slow. It's hard work again. Our leg, we're never going to get our legs, so I can stop talking about that for the rest of this time. The legs never came back. They always hurt the rest of this whole thing. And so we were lucky to get to 1,500 feet per hour. That was like really good for us. Anyway, we do Yale, we drop down to the other side, and the crew's waiting for us to resupply. And then actually I had this disagreement with Dan here. He really wanted to send a resupply into Pine Creek. And I had been hearing multiple times from people on the cruise, like how tired they are, and it's always mind-boggling to me as someone when I'm out there, because I'm like, we were just gone for 20 hours. How can you possibly be sleep deprived?
Right.
You know what I mean? And there's a lot of work to do as the crew.
Of course.
And, but they can also, they need to take better care of themselves. You know what I mean? Like the crew can work themselves. And so in this particular instance, I was really against them sending help into Pine Creek. It's like a 20-mile round trip to send help up there. And so I was like, look, Dan, we will get through. We don't need you to send anybody up Pine Creek. It's wasting our resources. I really wouldn't do it, and he's kind of stubborn. And in fact, early on, when we had the crew meeting, we specifically we didn't name him a crew leader. We didn't want to have someone named crew leader. We didn't want someone taking dictatorial control over the crew. You know what I mean? But we knew Dan was going to fall into that role. You know, we knew he would, because he's really good with the logistics and understanding of where people need to be, stuff like that. But here was a case where I didn't have the energy to really argue with him, you know, but I did tell him, I was like, look, fine, you can send somebody up there, but I don't want to hear anymore how you're going on 1 hour of sleep. You know, I don't want to hear that anymore. You need to take care of yourself, and you need to not, you know, you need to not waste people's time. And I really felt like that was a waste. Well, anyway, it turns out it's a good thing he did send somebody up there. Um, it's tough though. Man, it was like the crew was really, I think they were overworking themselves for us, and I really wish they hadn't. I wish they would have been a little more well rested. But anyway, so Sydney's gonna hike up with us. You know, we told you about Sydney. She's like our adopted daughter. She's like 21, and you know, so we're gonna do Columbia to Harvard. And so we're going up Columbia again. We're really slow. You know, we're just slow. We get up to the ridge, and then this like out of the nowhere, we get our first nasty weather of the whole thing, you know, and we're kind of surrounded by storms. It's really hard to predict where these storms are coming in from. um you know, and then all of a sudden it turns into this nasty hailstorm, lightning storm, and it's like the poles are buzzing, and actually something we've never experienced before. Like, I remember, you know, we're basically getting ready. We're just going to hunker down right on the trail. You know, it's kind of pointless to run from this thing. We're in the middle of it. It's hailing really hard.
Of Columbia.
And like I had already gathered up everyone's baseball hats. Baseball hats have these little metal beads in them. And they've been shown, you know, you can see where people have been struck in their head because of these things. So we don't want to be wearing those on our heads. I grab them all, stick them in my pack, grab everyone's poles. They're all buzzing. It's pretty amazing because the buzzing will really build. It's like, you know, if I hold my pole sort of sideways in the air, it'll start sparking on my hand. It actually kind of hurts, you know, and it'll build, and then there will be a strike somewhere, and then it all kind of chills out for a while, you know, and then it builds again, builds again. So it's sort of like your lightning strike warning system built in on your poles. Other people like, you idiot, that's like holding up a lightning rod. You know,
You always know when lightning's gonna strike. But I think the craziest thing was, you know, being up there, Andrew was kind of facing us, and I mean, the lightning bolts in the sky were just so close to us. And so there was just this lightning strike across the sky, and then there's just immediate thunder, and me and Sydney are just looking at each
these
other
like blast waves. It was crazy. We'd be talking and you'd feel this like whoosh across your face. We've never experienced that before. Yeah, I don't know what it was.
Be like,
Yeah.
I like at one point I was looking down and just walking, and it was just like this blast of wind that just kind of travels up your face, and it almost like blows back the hood from my rain jacket, and it's just the craziest thing, and I don't know what it is. I don't think we've ever really figured out what that is, but it's just this blast wave from the electricity in the air, and it's just wild. But you know, at one point we took out Wally, our little video camera.
Oh yeah,
and,
we were gonna get a video.
And we take him out, and we open him up and we turn him on, and he just gets fried. He doesn't work.
He died.
I
Poor
mean,
Wally.
he
We
just
were like,
died.
Wally, no. Lost Wally.
Just, and so it's like, so it's like, oh, video can't take, and so we had to like delete, you know, the last video, and
we were able to get him back to, but
he just got fried out there, and so it was just crazy.
So we hunkered down there, you know, we weren't going to be going in that hail, you know, and so we just hunkered down. I kind of put my arms around him. We were in our rain jackets, you know, and we just had to wait that one out. And so that was,
we just hunkered together.
Meanwhile, our goal had been to get to Pine Creek before dark so we could get started on Oxford in the light. You know, that was the whole goal. And now things are looking pretty bleak for that, because not only are our legs not working, but now we're waiting out this storm.
We have to get across the, you know, Columbia to Harvard. And honestly, I really don't like that traverse. It's just annoying. It's tedious. We take the ridge route, and it's just annoying for some reason. I mean, we're good at it, but I just don't like it.
We did sort of skip ahead. We got over the summit of Columbia, and then we got into that area of those big rock formations called the Rabbits. And then we found a really nice sheltered like alcove, and we just waited out another hailstorm. We ate food and we just sat there.
Actually, you know, looking out over Belford, Oxford and Belford, Belford was just covered in hail. And so it was pretty crazy. And we got this text message from Chris Tomer, and he was just telling us, he was kind of, texting us as we were up there. And finally, after we got to Harvard and we were on our way down, he told us, we were clear for the rest of the night. And so, so now we're headed down, and we're headed down to Pine Creek, and we have the option of going back down to our crew or heading up Oxford.
Yeah, because where they sent the help up to for Pine Creek, they can't send it to where we actually cross the river up there. They have, we have to get our support 3,000 feet below the summit of Oxford.
Oh,
And so we
gotcha.
actually have
Gotcha.
to, once we get to the trail, we'd have to turn right and go down for like, it seemed like forever. But that was another one of the reasons I was like thinking we wouldn't use that support and why it was such a waste to go in there. But actually, so we're coming down Harvard, and now, and it got dark about halfway down, and we had been seeing we'd been seeing these successive waves of storms blasting through the valley. And so where we normally cross, I'm not sure if you've been back there, but it's like this huge swamp of willows. And we've got this very specific path we always take to get through there. Works out great. But we're coming down and you're shining the light down there. And instead of like just like a river through the willows like we normally cross, it was like lakes. It was like a swamp area.
Yeah,
what was going on? It was very intimidating,
crazy.
not to mention all the willows were soaking wet. So now we've got to I was trying to decide, should we try to stay and look for a different place to cross, or do we deal with the willows? And we decided to deal with the willows, like stick with what we know,
Yeah.
And so we get through these horrible willows. We get to the river crossing. I end up piggybacking Andrea and Sydney across so they don't have to take their shoes off.
Yeah, it's so high, the river.
And then at that point, honestly, looking back, in hindsight, it probably would have been better if we didn't have the option of that stop in Pine Creek, because we would have been forced just to keep going, but it was there. And at that point, I was a little worried about Sydney. She hadn't complained at all, but she was in shorts, and it was really cold, it was super cold. And, we were tired, and I knew we were going to just turn into like fruit cases going up Oxford, because it was going to get dark, and we would be taking our 5-hour energies. It may have been a total pain in the butt. Belford was weird. The way it got hit by the storm, it was like a solid sheet of ice. Just Belford for some reason. Oxford was fine. Missouri was still dry.
Yeah.
But like Belford was for some reason just
a sheet of white.
Yeah. So, but anyway, so John was up there. We knew he had hiked in. So we decided, okay, they put all the effort into this support, stop just in case. Let's take it. So we turned down and we started hiking down Pine Creek to go find him, and we're looking at my altimeter. I see we're going to be dropping at least a couple hundred feet, elevation wise, but it was taking a while to get there. It was like not easy trail. It was like we're crossing these muddy little streams, and it's wet. And so anyway, we're yelling, we're like, John, we're yelling. Finally, we get a response, and we were so excited. And John, he's so amazing. Somehow, despite all the wood being soaking wet, he had a fire going, so, and he told us he had just gotten it going like 20 minutes before. I mean, it had taken him some work. Crazy. And he had gotten these logs, and he'd sort of created this area for us to go into. The bad news was he only brought a couple of pads. I guess they were picturing just this quick little, I don't know, like a 10-minute stop or just a little break.
Yeah, no sleeping bags.
And so there's no sleeping bags.
A 4-hour break at this place, but with the fire going, I mean, we were just on these pads where the sparks were hitting and the pads were deflating, and John
would jump up. He'd be like, "No problem, got it." He'd patch it, boom, patch, pump it back up.
And I was laying in front of Andrew, and so I was, taking up most of the heat source, and so Andrew was cold, this was like for 4 hours. So unfortunately,
John stayed up the entire time while we're trying to sleep, and he kept the fire going. I mean, he was really amazing to do this for us.
So unfortunately, it was just kind of it was a crazy night.
And now we're still cold. Our clothes are wet and they're not really dry. And so now we don't want to get away from this fire. So John sort of had to slowly let it die in order to sort of coax us out.
I know, I was so sad when he doused it.
So like 2 in the morning, or 2:30 or something, we're off again. And I wouldn't trade that experience for anything. Like, it felt like this survival situation. Sydney would hike out with John, so she went out with him. I love that experience. Just with John, he had a bunch of food for us to eat when we were down there, and just the way he got the fire going and kept it going for us all night. In hindsight, though, it probably would have been better if we'd been forced to go on. It would have just been better. And then, John wouldn't have had to waste an entire night out there. Actually, we kind of missed some fun. Andrea's sister had come out originally to meet us up there too with Riley, but she fell in the stream crossing on the way up. She got really cold and she had to go back out. So it's just I don't know. It's hard to say though. It might have been a disaster up there that night. I really don't know. It's hard to say. So anyway, we get going, and going up Oxford was hard. Andrea was slower than me. So what I would do at that point is I would get up ahead, and then I would just lay down and sleep. And she'd get up.
I didn't have a voice, so it's like I pass him, and then I'm trying to yell for him to like get up,
and then I would
because I have
there,
no voice.
and then I'd wake up, and she was up ahead, and then I'd go past her. I would just go up ahead and just. I was treasuring every minute of sleep I could get. It took us forever to get up there.
Yeah.
And then, we got up, we do Oxford, we do Belford, which was kind of blew our mind just of how it was like this one white mountain surrounded by, it's like really wild how it got hit so hard. So then we're going up Missouri now. We're going to go ahead. We're going to go for the ridge. It's in the light now. That's the one positive thing of being so slow, was that we're getting Missouri in the light. And we meet some guy who had just turned back. He was going to try it out. And we're like, hey, if you don't mind going really slow, we'll show you a great route up there. So he kind of kept us company going up there.
It's cool. It's nice to, be on these peaks and hike with other people. It kind of keeps us going when we're tired, and keeps the conversation rolling, and it just keeps things new. So it really actually really helps us.
Yeah. But just to give you an example of how slow we felt we were going, we only got Yale, Columbia, and Harvard done the previous day. That's just nothing. In Nolan's, we would have blasted through that in like, I don't know, a few hours, 6 hours.
Yeah.
And so it's really frustrating to be going that slow. And at one point, we'd felt like with the crew, gosh, are we just wasting their time? We're going so slow. Like, what are we doing out here? And so they really did a good job. Dan, I think his shining moment was when he sort of came out to us and he was like, listen, the crew, we are 100% behind you. We're having the time of our life out here. We're loving this. We just don't want you to quit. We don't care how long it takes. And so that really gave us the confidence to let's just keep going. It doesn't matter how slow we are. We're just going to keep going. So anyway, we finished Missouri off. We get down to Cohesi Lake. That's where the sisters, Andrea's sisters got her, and they did her hair, and she had that smile on her face. And, anyway, then we decided not to do the rugged side of Huron. We decided just to let them drive us around, and that was another spot where, man, if John hadn't been wasted on Pine Creek, he might have been there with the Falcon. He could have done it really fast, but it's okay. We got to lay down in the beast, and get a little bit more rest, which we were trying to, savor every minute we could get. So the rest of that day, we just did Huron and La Plata. And La Plata was another one of these ones where just coming down, her knees were just in such pain. She was just dying. And so we just had to get her down to her sister's, because at one point there, I was like, I tried to piggyback her, but I was too weak. I only picked that
3 seconds.
I got her like, 10 seconds and my legs were toast. And the trail was too narrow that I couldn't even like put her arm over my shoulder. I was going to try to help her down that way. So
so I just figured that I just needed to get down.
There was nothing I could do.
And what really was, I was saying, helps my knee is just getting a little bit of a break, getting back to the van, getting a break off of my knee, because the nighttime peaks just make it really rough.
So anyway, we'd finished the Saw Watch. Now that was La Plata. It was a lot tougher than we thought the Saw Watch was going to be, just because we love the Saw Watch. And now we've got to go, and we got to go get Capital Snowmass back in the Elks, and so we knew it was the time we had to go back over there. So we're going to do Capital Snowmass, and so we drive over there. And start
our
Capital.
Capital was really not that bad. We had a pretty good ascent time up. Dan and Megan were with us for the first little bit, and then they parted with us, and then we got to the top of Capital, and it was actually really fun. there was a group of people up there that recognized us. And so we got to, you know, kind of share in excitement a little bit of what we were doing. And so that was really cool. And then on the way down, this girl, Chris, she just decided to come down with us. She actually thought we were going to be doing Satan's Ridge, and we told her, no, that's not what we're doing.
Well, this whole group of people, they were waiting. They thought they were going to see the spectacle of these two people doing Satan's Ridge, you know, which is the connecting ridge between Capitol and Snowmass.
It's just really dangerous.
Oh yeah, it's terrible. It would be so slow. It would take forever. So yeah, that was not going to happen. So we had to disappoint them. Be like, sorry guys, you know.
But we were hiking down with this girl, Chris, and so honestly, Capitol was a great mountain for us. It went by pretty quick, and it kind of all, you know, went to shit when we had to go down the Wandering Dutchman couloir, because down in Pierre Lakes Basin, it was kind of just a heat furnace. And that's kind of where we started to get fried. We were really hot. We got really tired. And you just basically have miles of just big boulder hopping and miles until you connect to Snowmass. And I mean, we've done this connection in about 6 hours in a training run, and it took us the entire day from trailhead to trailhead. It took us about 19. And so
we're calling it like Satan's Furnace because, you know, it's Satan's Ridge there. And the thing about Pierre Lakes Basin, it's very remote. Like there's no reason to be in there. It's basically just a big pile of rocks and some lakes, and the rocks are just so hot. We just felt like our brains were being boiled.
These mirrors of just heat just baking on us. And so
turns out it was the hottest day of the year in Colorado at that point. And so it was hot everywhere. It was especially hot in there.
We were just desperately, you know, getting water from water sources and trying not to eat all of our calories. We really had to savor our calories. We didn't have much food remaining. And so and then Snowmass was one of those mountains where Sydney met up with us.
She was waiting for us. Like when we came across the traverse, she and Dan were kind of waiting, and they greeted us. And once we met up with them, Dan went down, and then Sydney joined us for the climb up Snowmass.
Continued on, and that was great because it, like, you know, our Snowmass to Capitol day, or Capitol to Snowmass was just one of another big low for us. And
going up Snowmass again, it took us all day. So now we just want to get up and down the backside of Snowmass before it's dark again. So we're racing. We're always racing darkness, you know.
Racing the clock.
And so, but this last 1,500 feet, the altimeter on our watch, it just doesn't want to change. I mean, we're working. We look 50 feet. Oh my God, working. We just we couldn't get a foot to save our lives. You know, it felt like so much work. So we finally get to the summit. And we're just exhausted, and then, we come down and we get through the cliff part right before it gets dark. And now it turns dark. And so now Sydney can actually take the lead for us once we get to 11,000 feet, but we have to get to that 11,000 foot mark, spot before we can sort of like give her a pack.
We just need her to take the reins.
We just need to be able to turn our brains off.
Turn our brains off.
But this stupid trail just won't cooperate. We get down to this point. And then we got to climb up to this lake. We would have been screwed because fortunately Andrea's phone had a route on there from one of our previous trips. I didn't have any route in there.
Yeah, so we were able to follow. We were able to follow the route a bit, which was
thankfully Andrea's phone had that, or we would have been lost. That we'd still be up there, But anyway, so we get down, and now right when we finally get to 11,000 feet, and let me tell you, that was hard work. I mean, that trail did not want to get us down there. So finally, Sydney can sort of take over and get in the front. At this point, I just desperately want to go to sleep. I'm so tired. That's all I can think about. And they won't let me, I just want to little sleep. And they're like, just push,
Yeah.
And meanwhile, Andrea's knee is just killing her such to the point where she's gonna.
Yeah. So we're hiking and we're just about 2 miles out now from the end of the trail. And this is about the time where it happens. It's like, I felt this you feel this like little twang or two. And then once that happens, it's like this weakness kind of happens in my muscles in my knee, where once I feel that, then it doesn't stop. And the pain just kind of increases and it gets more excruciating. So Sydney was just really amazing how she was just kind of encouraging me the whole way, you know, we're almost there, we have this much further to go, and kind of things like that. So she really saved the night
I was really
there.
proud of her. There was one spot where Andrea was like, "How do I go down this?" It was this really steep section, and she was like, "Just bend over and plant your poles and go." And it was exactly the way I would have described it when she was a kid. You know what I mean? So I'm just hearing that.
It's
I was
just,
like,
you
"Wow,
know,
Sydney, that was
it's
beautiful."
just
You
so
know?
late, you know, your brain's so fried. You just,
Yeah.
you know, you
Yeah.
just forget who you are in
Well,
the
yeah.
mountains during this
Yeah.
time.
Well,
So
Andrea, like with her pain in the dark, you know, she just gets so tired. And I think this is true for anybody. When you're tired, you can't tolerate the same sort of pain you can tolerate when you're wide awake in the day. You know,
Sure.
you just lose the ability to tolerate it. So, you know, it's just these night times were so tough on us. So I actually now we're in range where we can receive help. I actually sent a message to Dan. I was like, "Hey Dan, can you come back up and help Andrea get down?" Like we still got like 3 miles to go on this trail, which is it's gonna be steep. There's like these switchbacks and rocky. It would really be really help to have his nice to have his help here. But this is one of those situations that I had been worried about where he was so exhausted. He was trying to get some sleep down at the Falcon, and he had told Randy to give updates on our position via the satellite tracker, but the noise was keeping him awake. So he had actually put that away so he couldn't hear it. So he never got this message that we needed him. And so, you know, that's one of these things where it's like where I always want the crew, take care of yourselves, you know, for
because
these.
it could be bad if we
What if,
really need
I mean,
you.
it
Mhm.
potentially, what if Andrea couldn't have gotten down? Oh my gosh, I don't know what would have happened
So
right
it's just
there.
one of those
Yeah.
situations where it could have
Yeah.
been bad.
Could
It
have,
wasn't,
Sure.
but it
yeah,
could have
and
been
Sydney
bad.
really came through. I mean,
Yeah.
Sydney saved the day. We just owe her so much, you know.
Mhm.
Like she happened to be there on these like
Yeah.
lowest moments.
Yeah,
It's a really
Mhm.
yeah, she
blessed.
really happened to
Yeah.
be on the lowest of peaks with us,
Yeah.
you know, in the
It's pretty
electrical
amazing.
storms
Yeah.
and just our longest snow domestic capital day. So it's just,
Yeah.
yeah.
I should mention that before she hiked up with Dan, she had locked her keys in her car. And so in the town of Marble. And so basically, as she came up wearing a bunch of Andrea's clothes, and she was with Dan, and they put John on the job of breaking into this vehicle.
Yeah.
And so that was his job for the day, was like breaking into this vehicle so that she could drive again.
Yeah.
So the
So we
rest of the
didn't
crew
have
was
our
busy.
driver,
Yeah.
you know?
Yeah,
Oh
yeah.
man. But
Yeah,
anyway.
so anyway, you know, Dan, then he has to drive us down, you know, back down to the vehicles. Thank goodness we were done with Capital and Snowmass, but man, did they crush us.
Yeah.
Like they just totally
Yeah,
crushed us.
and it did.
Yeah,
But you know, I would say the rest of the peaks from here on out
yeah,
were pretty we're
yeah,
really just kind of on
yeah,
cruise control now. You
yeah,
know, we kind of
yeah,
knew how they were all going to go.
yeah,
We knew how the nights were going to be. We knew we had to get
yeah,
back to my sisters. We knew the food we
yeah,
needed to be eating. So
yeah.
everything else was kind of more just kind of just
This is
death march
this is
through.
the home stretch. This is like we had Castle and Conundrum left in the Elks, pretty easy ones. Um, and then after that, it's all the ones that pretty much are
It was
from like the one
yeah,
day records. You know, it's all the
it's all the
easies.
front
The
range and the
Sherman,
Nile
the
mosquito.
Calibron, Quandary, all of them were actually scary for us in the state we were in.
Well, you're searching
Yeah,
for these easy peaks, but
yeah,
it's like no matter what,
yeah,
you don't get easy peaks because
yeah,
we're going, you know, up Argentine Pass, you know, for Grays and Torreys, and that's super steep. We're going down the crappy Ross descent, which is just total crap,
Mhm.
you know, and takes us forever. So it's like you're searching for these
You've never
easy
heard two
peaks.
people so afraid of the Calibron in your life
Yeah.
as us.
And
Like we were so
yeah,
afraid.
and they
Yeah.
just come. And it's like I remember just crying to my sister on our way up to Calibron,
Mhm.
you know, just being like, this sucks. And I was just crying in her arms. And she just was telling me, look, these are just emotions. You're gonna be fine. Just,
Mhm.
you know, and just get hiking,
Yeah.
basically. And so it was just a really, you know, it's really hard finishing out these mountains, but we were on the home stretch, and I think I didn't really see myself through on the record until we got to about 3 peaks before the end. And that was, you know, it was really fun on Grays and Torreys when Andrew's family, you know, his kids and his sister, my sisters and his nieces, they all just came up in this big rainstorm and just met us up there, and we all got to hike down together. So that was great. It was a really big high for us, and little things like that kind of kept our spark alive. And I finally was able to feel more relaxed and to feel like, okay, I can actually finish this thing. So
Yeah,
I think
I remember,
it
and we
definitely
also
took a
we
lot.
had a big laugh on top of Grace because like my knees were kind of bothering me, and we are like, well, at least we only have a few peaks left. And then it was like, ha, remember when your knee started hurting and we had like 30 peaks
Yeah,
left?
we were like,
And I
this
don't know,
is
we
about
both thought
30
that was really
mountains.
funny, and we had a really good laugh, which was
Yeah.
good,
It's
right?
probably our
Yeah.
first laugh on the whole attempt.
Because honestly, throughout the whole thing, we kept talking about how we were in hell, and we knew it, and it was just like every day was another day in hell. And
Mhm.
actually, we look back to that Capital Snowmass day, and we're like, that's the inner circle of
That was
hell.
the
That's
inner
reserved
circle
for
of
the
hell.
worst people, like that day. But so anyway, yeah. So we finished that peak where all the kids were there, and it started raining, and then finally we've just got to get to Longs, you
Mm.
know.
Yeah, and
Oh,
we
well,
had our
actually, I should
crew with
mention
us.
on Evans and Bierstadt, we decided just to hike down the road.
Yeah.
It was a strategic decision
Just
because
because of
of
my
her knee,
knee.
but man, that road
Mm.
sucks. Oh my
Oh,
God,
that
it lasts
sucks. Yeah.
forever.
Yep.
And so I mean, just another low, but we made it out of there. And so then we get to go to Longs. Finally, we know we're just about done. A bunch of people show up to hike up with us. We're sort of hiking at regular hiking hours, so we're sort of just hiking. There's a lot of people on the route. And I don't know, we make it to the top, and
It was
gosh, that
really
was such a great
exciting,
feeling. Yeah,
it
we
was
had,
exciting.
yeah, Dan and Megan were there, Riley was
Yeah,
there,
I mean,
yeah,
Dave was there,
Dave was there,
it was
and
just like a lot
yeah,
of our crew was there. And then
yeah,
whoever wasn't hiking with us met us at the 3,000 mark.
yeah.
And, for everything that we went through, and I know Andrew says we were hiking really slow, and for us, we were hiking pretty slow, but honestly, to get through all of the 14ers and have the third fastest time, even together as a couple, I mean, we double our risk of failure, going out there as a couple.
True. Yeah.
We have the third fastest time to complete the mountains all together. And so I just think that overall, we're super excited that we didn't quit, and that no matter how slow you think you're going, as long as you're going at a somewhat consistent pace, you can get through the mountains at a relatively decent speed, and it's just really hard not to quit, when it's just knocking at your door.
I
So
was really proud of Andrea because she was really at rock bottom, and there was like that night on the Calibron, she was actually kind of lashing out, and I think it was because she felt so bad, like she was like feeling so bad that like, oh, she wasn't worthy, and she felt so bad about her pace and how she was doing, and and I just remember thinking that, I first of all, I remember I've had those same emotions in some adventure races when I just feel like I was just doing really bad for the whole team. And I was just so proud of her that she kept going because we were on the verge of quitting so many
Mm-hmm.
times.
Mm-hmm.
I feel like,
mhm,
just on the verge. And it
yeah.
was really just, it was this for a while, that one more peak. And then her sisters showed up, and the way they could fix her mind, and just the way she kept going. I don't think she's ever going to forget that for the rest of her life. So to me, the time doesn't even matter. I mean, I don't even really care about the time. It was really just this experience we had with everybody. Um, I mean, and the crew, the way they develop these bonds, like they're this really great friends. I mean, they worked so hard for us, and I
Mm-hmm.
know I was kind of doubting how hard that they worked for us, as I was talking to you, but man, they poured their heart and soul into it, all of them. I mean, that's the reason they were working so hard, is they were just pouring their heart and soul into us just to get us to finish. So
Mm-hmm.
And
it
I don't
was
think
really
we ever
amazing.
doubted how hard they worked
Yeah.
for us.
Oh, no, no, I never doubted that. Yeah,
Oh, I thought
I
you that's what
no,
you just
no, no,
said.
no. I was saying when I was doubting some of the decisions that were made,
Oh, that's what.
Yeah, I was doubting some of those decisions. I felt like, hey, you guys should take care of yourselves better, sleep better. But they were just working so hard, making sure that there was someone there to meet us at 11,000 feet, and stuff like that on all these peaks. So, and it's really, for me, it's that experience with all these people, and now the crew thread is still going crazy every day. They're still all talking.
Mhm.
These people that hardly knew each other, they're like best friends now. You know what I
Mm-hmm.
mean? And
Mm-hmm.
so, we're gonna have this big get together in a couple months, and I'm just really excited for that. And it's just, the whole experience was really amazing. I wouldn't change a thing. I really love that it turned into this survival
Slog.
epic,
Mhm.
rather than, because, if something goes perfectly, it's like all great and fine and stuff, but you really learn about your character when things go terrible.
When you
Mm-hmm.
just beat yourself to shit.
And then what happens, that's when you really learn about
and
yourself.
everything
And
goes
so,
wrong,
yeah,
and nothing's going right, and what do you do? How do you continue? And you have to dig the deepest that you've ever dug before, to
yeah,
get yourself through. So that's where the whole experience really kind of ties everything together.
yeah, yeah.
Mm. What'd you guys do to celebrate? You guys finished Long's Peak.
Oh my gosh.
God.
Well, first of all, we had this great dinner in Netherlands
Yeah.
and it was cool. There was a lot of, we were like this Indian place in Netherlands.
Oh, yeah,
And
yeah.
it was kind of cool. I mean, we took up this huge long table, almost most of the crew is there. Sadly, I don't think my sister was there, and a couple of other people, but it was really cool because Dan sort of started this thing. It's like where we would talk about everybody's role and sort of toast to that person.
Yeah.
Oh,
And it's
wow.
like thanks to that person for everything they did. It was like nobody had a minor role in this thing.
Everyone was critical.
Everyone was critical. People we didn't think were going to be critical, they all had some big role that they played. I mean, it was really amazing to me. I
Yeah.
just, it was really cool. So that was, when the crew was still together. Then we came here and then we washed the van, like we were all here
Wow.
and actually, I mentioned those rainbows on the drive out here. We get back to my house. There's this huge rainbow over our neighborhood. It was like a very fitting
It was so
finish
cool
to the whole thing,
Yeah.
and,
Yeah,
and
that was really cool.
yeah,
And unfortunately, the following
yeah,
day, I had to take my sisters back to the
yeah,
airport, and
yeah, too
kind of
sad.
everyone went their own separate
Yeah.
ways. And we've been kind of in a brain fog for the last week
Oh
of
yeah.
just
Yeah.
trying to clean our gear and get our laundry
Mhm.
done, get our house back in order, clean the Forerunner. So
And these nightmares, I'm telling you, like,
yeah,
and it's getting better. But like the first night, I like jump out of bed and I'm like, oh my, I'm in a panic. I felt like I was in the back of the beast. And I'm like,
Mhm.
I'm jumping up. I like, we gotta go. We
yeah,
gotta go. And I like jumped onto the
yeah.
floor and I kind of felt the carpet and I just fell asleep and I just
Yeah,
slept on
the
the
first night Andrew ended up
floor.
sleeping on the floor,
Yeah.
and it's like, we're both having nightmares that we're still on
Yeah.
peaks or our trackers on, and so, it's a little bit of PTSD for a little bit.
Yeah. So and then like I said, we're gonna have this big sort of celebration later. Oh yeah, and we're waiting. So Riley, he was kind of there the whole time taking video. So really, we're really excited to see what sort of video he puts together. I've never had that done on anything I've done before. So I'm just excited because it'll help me remember the whole experience. I'm just sad because like a lot of my previous records, I've really forgotten a lot of the details.
Sure.
And it is
So
pretty cool.
yeah.
I mean, our crew has a photo thread. I mean, we have 1,200 pictures and
Mm.
200 videos on our photo album, which is really cool because it's never been documented so well before, any of our adventures. So I think that that's what makes that really cool.
Oh, I should mention that the Beast, it's this big kind of intimidating van. You really wouldn't want it tailgating you. It's, one of those ones where you're like, okay, pull over, let that thing go. And, so I picture it kind of like with these, teeth painted on it and stuff. But by the end, they had painted like, or they had taken some red duct tape and they'd put a big red cross on the
Yeah,
side.
we always refer to it as the
It was
medical
like the
wagon.
medical. So it went from the Beast to the medical wagon.
Yeah.
Yeah.
How's recovery been?
It's hard.
We make sure we
Yeah,
move every day. Like we
yeah,
do a couple, we'll do a hike every day on North Table. That's just like a little training mountain near
yeah.
us. Just like about 700 feet up.
We
And
went into it and we said, when we're done, we're not done. We have to keep our bodies
you
hiking
have to keep
because
hiking.
if you just stop, and I've learned this the hard way, your body like it like takes revenge on you.
It'll spell and it'll
Mhm.
spell. And so you
Yeah, your
really,
tendons
you've
don't
got to
work.
keep
Yeah,
going. And so
yeah.
every day we've just,
Just
made it a
little
point to
hikes.
just
Yeah,
move our body. And
yeah,
and I think soon here we're gonna start getting ready to, get back
yeah.
into hiking more and do a little
Or
bit
a little
more
more,
intense
yeah.
training.
Because
But we are
right
going
now,
to the beach next week. So
oh yeah,
I think that'll be
yeah.
even more of a recovery for
Right.
us.
Nice. Well deserved.
What I've been telling people is it does feel like you've been hit by a bus. You kind of stand up there, your head hurts, you feel like you're in a fog. We've still got body parts that feel numb. You still can't. We're probably not going to feel our toes until Christmas. They call them Christmas toes. So yeah, it is like a fog. Recovery is tough from these
Yeah,
things. It really is.
Mhm.
Yeah.
yeah, yeah. High points, low points, throughout the whole thing. Do you guys have the same high points and low points,
I'd
or?
say I'd say high points for me really were just seeing my sisters and getting myself feeling freshened up, and put new clothes put on, new, taking care of my knee in a different way, which by the way is almost totally fine now.
Oh,
It's
good.
just, it was just really just an overuse, and my body just needed to stop hiking for a little bit, and get back to normal. So but I would say the real highs didn't come, and the real smiles on my face didn't really come until we hit, the 10-mile Mosquito in the Front Range, where I really thought that I could get through, because most of the attempt is just this mode of survival, and just me being in the state of like, how am I going to make it through one more mountain? And so I wasn't worried about really anything other than just getting through. So the high points were really all happening kind of once we hit Castle Conundrum and then got into the Front Range and the 10 miles Mosquito.
For me, it's similar to what she said. We knew it was going to be hell. I wasn't looking for any high points as we were going. I was just hoping that it would qualify as type 2 fun. I was worried that, when we look back at it, it wouldn't seem fun at all. But now that we're done and I'm reflecting on it, I can say for me, I mean, a high point is definitely looking back to that moment where we told everyone we were done. And when Dan came to me sort of and he's like, "Hey, the crews, we're with you. You know what I mean? We don't care how slow you're going. It's okay." And the fact that we kept going, I'll always look at back at that moment is just like this real high point where really we hit the absolute
Kind
bottom.
of a turning point.
We hit the absolute bottom and we kept going.
Mhm.
So that's a high point looking back. At the time it sucked. It was awful. Yeah, and then the other high point for me, well, it's just like I sort of just did, just reflecting on the experience for everybody that was involved. It's so cool. That's one thing. A lot of people are really fans of like unsupported or self-supported attempts because it's more like, one man versus or woman, versus the elements, you know. But with these supported attempts, you can really have this like you can share it with other people. And like this is like for her sisters, like it was just such a cool experience for them to come out and experience that. And for everyone else, we know that for a few days it was really hard for them just to go back to work. They were all just thinking about the record and stuff
Course.
like that. So it's an experience you just don't get when you're doing those individual records. We got this big
And
group of
and not
friends.
to mention, it makes it so much more complicated, so much more difficult when you're dealing with two people, because like I said, not only you have the double the chance of, failure, but you're taking care of two people's ailments, two people's complications and
Yeah.
highs and lows and, issues. And so it makes it so much more
I was so
difficult.
jealous. Like her sisters, Andrea would lay there and she would be, "Would somebody tickle my feet?" And so they tickle her feet. And I'm like, "No one's tickling my feet." And they're like, "Oh, your feet are too gross."
Say
I
that.
remember, oh yeah. Well, I remember Lauren, that's her sister, and she hates feet. And she was the one, she would actually tape my feet up a little bit for me. And she would just get this big smile when I was like, let's just leave the socks on. They're fine. You know what I mean? She'd be like, "Yes."
But I specifically remember them working on Andrew's feet. I mean,
Yeah.
no one ever complained about Andrew or his feet. I don't know where
She
he's getting
just she
that
missed
from.
that part. She missed
No, I
that
mean,
part.
even your sister was saying how they had their face in your feet and they were never complaining,
Yeah. Oh, I feel bad for them. Yeah.
So
Yeah.
yeah, no, so I just think that having two people just
It is.
really
Yeah.
complicates
It
it.
complicates it
And
greatly. Yeah.
you're
Yeah.
only as fast as your weakest link. And so, when you're by yourself, you only have you to worry about, but when you have two people, it just adds such a different complicated element,
Yeah.
which I kind of just, it makes us really proud of our accomplishment and what we've done.
Yeah.
Mhm.
Sure. Yeah.
I mean, I think you guys would probably agree with this. Like doing these sort of endeavors, you're exploring yourself and trying to become a better person. And so something like this, and you guys have done a lot of this stuff, but like, what do you walk away from this having learned about yourself? Like, do you come away from an adventure like this 1% a better person? Or do you guys even think in those terms? Or
Gosh, I think I'm still kind of trying to process the whole thing, but I do know that these things do change you. And I don't know quite to the extent right now how I haven't reflected too much on how this has really changed me or kind of how it's developing me yet. I think that what I've realized is that I was very dependent on, the positivity of the community, which was really cool. And that how I really appreciate inspiring other people and hearing other stories, come out of this and how we inspire them. And I think that's really cool because at first I just saw this as a project of just like, hey, I have this project and I want us to complete it. And that's basically it. And so and so how it's really for right now grown for me is just that everyone that's involved, the relationships, the people, the inspiration to others that we have an impact on. I think all of that is really special to me. And then just actually like, wow, I've never experienced that amount of grit in myself to where I've been on the verge of quitting. I threatened to quit a lot. To threaten so much and to just keep moving. I usually on these big endeavors do threaten to quit but I never actually really see myself carrying that through just because I know I don't want to embarrass myself. Like we said in the beginning, we want to be doers of our word and we want to, commit to what we say we're going to do. But to actually be in the depths of hell and to have to pull ourselves through and to keep going. I mean, I've never experienced that type of grit in myself before. So I thought that was pretty cool.
Yeah, this is by far the hardest thing she's ever done. And I mean, the first time I did a 14er record, it was kind of similar. I was 24, it was 1999, and it was just ridiculous. And I kept going, and it was something similar, to this finish here, where at the end, I kind of had this new sense of self-confidence in myself because I had just kept going,
We can
Yeah.
go through anything
Yeah.
and we know that we'll be able to keep going. And
Yeah.
so I think that's
Right.
something
Yeah,
cool that
for
we
sure.
can, take from that.
Yeah, I remember Buzz Burrell, he's sort of well known in the adventure racing community and stuff. And he had written this article and he said, Hamilton is the least fit person to ever try something like this, but then he went on to talk about my persistence, and so that's sort of always been my thing. Is like just that confidence, then I can keep pushing
Yeah, our
through.
favorite
Yeah,
quote is be not
yeah,
afraid of going slowly, be afraid only of standing still.
yeah.
And it just goes to show that you can push and you can keep going and you can accomplish so much more than, you would even know
Yeah.
to be able to accomplish.
And why one thing that's really exciting about having finished and not quit is that we'd still have to clean all that gear. We'd still be going through all this horrible recovering and like nightmares. And yet then we would have been
But we
like,
wouldn't have
man,
had
but
to
we
finish.
quit. Like, gosh darn it, And
Yeah.
so
So
it's
at
yeah,
least
it's
it makes it all the suffering
yeah,
worth
it
it.
makes it worth it. Although I will say we did give a talk earlier this year about how failing can be good. It's like you can
It
learn
can teach
lessons
you a
from
lot
failing.
for sure.
And this is sort of like a successful failure. We have a lot that we learned from this as well. And so
There's a lot we would
that's
have
not
done
to say,
different.
if you do need to quit something, you do have some real bad injury, you can't go on. You should quit.
And
It's
just
good,
and yeah,
and you can really learn
and
from
you
that.
can really learn
You
from
know,
your
yeah, you can
experiences.
absolutely learn from that. So it's not to say you have to push through no matter what and finish.
We just are
Yeah,
stubborn
but
and we like
yeah,
to push through
yeah,
when we can.
yeah,
And I mean, we
yeah,
have quit in
yeah,
many things, but we also don't like to quit either. And
yeah.
so as long as we know that we can push through, we try to, and it does usually in the end, it's worth it.
Any idea where we're going to be able to see the documentary when it comes out?
We'll let you know. We'll
We'll
let
let
you
you
know
know.
for
Yeah,
sure. We'll have to let
I'm
you know.
not
Yeah.
sure. Riley's putting it
Yeah.
together,
Yeah, we don't
so
know.
we'll
Yeah.
definitely keep you posted.
Yeah.
It'll probably take some time to put together, but
Oh yeah.
Yeah,
I mean,
yeah,
the
it'll
poor
probably
guy.
take a couple months.
Yeah. So this podcast, it's been a pretty long one, right? Well, we did an exit interview with him where we got like through a third of it in like 3 hours. the poor guy, I'm thinking he'll probably use like 5 seconds of that.
Yeah.
And so the amount of
So
video
he has
he's
a
got to
lot
go
of, he has
through.
a lot of
Yeah.
content that
know.
that Riley needs to go through,
So,
and so
Okay.
it'll be difficult,
Yeah.
but I mean, we gave a lot of content, that's for sure.
Yeah.
Good.
Yeah. So we're hoping he can come up with something that really captures it. That'd
Yeah.
be really cool.
Okay.
Yeah.
And you guys said you have a write-up of some sort. Do you guys have a website or
We have
anything?
we've been
Yeah.
working on that, and actually, thank goodness I finally took the time to figure out how to get dictation working on my computer. That is really speeding things up.
It's really helpful. So
Normally, yeah.
we're on day 5 of so basically we've gone through 6 days because we started at day -1, and
Yeah.
so we'll probably be finishing up here in the next couple days, and we have a blog, and it's just a2summit.com is our website, and on it is our blog, and that's where we're just going to post day to day, just through the attempt, and we'll have all of our pictures on there, and so pretty soon we'll be having that up and running and posted. So
Yeah, and I'll also update our thread on 14ers.com.
Yep.
That's always a good sort of historical place to sort of keep a lot of this stuff. So we'll post that same blog stuff as like a trip report on there, I think is what we'll do. Yeah.
Yep.
Yeah.
So
Good.
we'll keep you posted on all those things, and we're actually going to do a talk with Arcteryx, and it would be I mean, it'd be great if you were able to show up, or anyone else who
That would be
listening
amazing,
to
man.
this.
That would
Where's
be
it
awesome
at?
if you showed up and said something.
Is it in
We'd love to see
Boulder?
you in person.
We're not 100% sure where it's going to be. It'll be in the next 4 weeks, and so we'll keep you posted about
Okay.
where that'll be.
If I'm around, I'm there. I'd love to hear you guys, and I'd love to meet you guys.
Yeah,
Yeah,
that'd
that
be
would be
so
awesome.
fun. That
That'd
would
be
be
really cool.
amazing. Yeah.
Cool.
Thank you so much for listening
Yeah.
to our story, being interested in it. I know we talk
Of
so
course.
much,
Oh my
but
gosh. I can just wind you guys up and let you go. It's amazing. I don't have to do anything.
really, really
Well, you
exciting.
didn't see
and
Andrea kept kicking me because she thought I was talking
just
too
he
much. So
talks
she
a
was
lot.
like,
So
so she,
sometimes I like to interrupt and just insert my own story and opinion, because just to kind of slow him down a little bit.
You guys always bounce well off of each other, and it's always a pleasure to listen to. And you guys have just been through so much, and just what an epic adventure. And it's an honor for you guys to share it with me.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Thank you so
Yeah.
much for just
we appreciate
being
you, man.
interested
Yeah.
and just having taking account of our stories. I mean, every time we do a big adventure, we just love coming to you and just sharing our whole experience with you. It's one of our highlights after we finish
And,
anything.
I want to tell you too that I've met lots of people out there that have been like, they'll listen to
They do
these
love the
podcasts.
podcasts.
Yeah, that you've got, and including the ones of us, while they're out there,
Okay.
and it is inspiring for them and stuff like that. So
We
so
appreciate you.
It is
We
pretty
really
cool.
do. It's cool what you're doing.
I think it's pretty cool that this exists out there.
Yeah.
Well, I had taken a break on it for a little while, but maybe you guys have reinvigorated the podcast. So we'll just keep it going.
And we are, like we said, we're firsthand. I mean, people love your podcast. They love the Do Big Things podcast.
Yeah.
And so I think that, you should keep it going. I mean, there's plenty of athletes out there who are all after all the big things. And so it's just really cool, what you do, taking interest in everyone and everyone's adventures. It's just really inspiring.
Sadly, they'll never be as cool as us, but
got that right, damn it. Well, I just really enjoy being able to live sort of vicariously through you guys. So yeah, you guys just keep kicking ass and doing big things, and we'll just keep telling the stories and getting it out there to inspire people.
Awesome. Well, we love it. Thank you so much for everything. Really.
Thank you guys. Anytime, please.
All right, and we'll keep you posted on everything in the future coming up about this. And
please do.
We'll hopefully get to meet you in person.
I would love it. I'm gonna make that happen.
Awesome.
Cool, guys. Thank you so much. Have a great night.
Thanks so much.
Hopefully talk to you soon. You bet.
That sounds great.
Good. Bye-bye.
Okay.